All right, good morning. This is the November 14th joint meeting of Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen and all our town department heads to talk about budgets. It'll be a fun day. Looking forward to it.
You're the only one.
And Jim's got a sticky bun, so everybody's happy, right?
I'm happy, yeah,
All right.
absolutely. Absolutely.
If Jim's happy, we're
A
all.
little bacon on top would have been nice.
I'll make a note. All right. Mr. Clyde, you'd like to start us off, please?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know how you want to go through it, or
Yeah, let's just talk about the highlights, what you've got, what you propose for this year, and changes for next year.
pretty much the level staffing budget is pretty much what it says. The only changes are the contractual agreements through collective bargaining. We haven't accepted any new roads lately, but we're still busy with existing roads and construction. Struggling with to retain help, so we're constantly have open positions.
Is that something new?
Within the last few years,
Has the economy's gotten better?
I think that's part of it. So we constantly shorthanded, so it's a little bit of a struggle. I guess for the big stuff is the mission budget is where we'd like to bring back the engineering position. We do have a contracted engineer, firm to do design and things like that, but
Yep.
the office is extremely busy with other stuff, and we're kind of struggling to keep up. And, that position's been gone since he retired in 2003, and officially he was working part-time until 2006, so that position's been vacant for close to 10 years. It's becoming a pretty big struggle to keep up. So that's pretty important to me. My current office administrator has taken on a big burden, and she does quite a bit. We would actually like to regrade her position and see if we can bring her up a little bit to give her some more duties. That's one of the changes, and then we're looking for 2 additional park employees for the park department through the department evaluation that we had done last year. We're supposed to have, the industry standard is 1 person for every 8 to 10 acres of grass. We have 2 people for 60 acres, so we're at 30 acres per person. And again, we're struggling.
Are these seasonal people, Jim, or
They would
are they
be
full-time?
year-round,
Okay.
because we can use them for plowing and things like that. Again, we're always struggling with that, and, I know there's a lot of talk about the condition of the fields, and
Really?
it's basically overuse. I mean, we're doing what we can do, but we don't have any time to do maintenance to them. They don't give it a rest, and I know it has nothing to do with us per se, but when you hear all this stuff about fields being in poor condition, it reflects on us, and
Doesn't feel good.
Yeah,
I get that.
correct.
So with having these park employees, is there some offset there in terms of not paying overtime for some of the other things, or contractors, or not necessarily? Not really?
we-
It's just add-on?
If you look at our overtime budget, we get $12,000 or $13,000 a year, excluding snow. And, that's split amongst 10 people. So it's not a huge amount. So we pretty much, it's only for emergencies.
Okay. Other questions or comments on that? We're going to talk about capital?
Just question for Bonnie. When we look at requests for new employees, we look in the book here, in Jim's case, the engineer, it's $68,000 plus benefits. It's a lot easier if we have a general idea of what the real cost is. The 68,000 then benefits is not just health insurance, but we've got to pay OPEB and many other little pieces that go in there, which makes 68,000 be 106,000.
Right. We generally add about between 34 and 36% for fringe, because depending on what type of insurance plan they take, it averages out between 34 and 36, and that covers all of those categories, the FICA, the Medicare, health insurance, the OPEB contribution that we need to make.
So if we look at a figure like that and use a fudge factor or an increase factor of about 32%, we're
No, say 35.
35, then we're somewhere in the ballpark. Thank you.
And it does include OPEB, though, because we had talked about that. It does.
Yes.
And then are we actually putting that away now for OPEB, or is it just a budgeting purpose?
Actually, according to the financial policies, we are. So I adjust the budget every year for new hires that are brought in, and because our policy states that when we bring people in, we're going to budget for their OPEB costs as they're brought in. So
Okay.
it kind of stops the bleeding, per
Right,
se, for
exactly.
going
Okay, all
forward.
right, so we are doing that now.
Yep.
And that's been for the last year?
We started that last year,
Okay.
yep.
Just to go back to the engineer for a minute, I mean, we currently have a resident engineer on the New Estate Road project, and the budget for that amount is $128,000 just to have him there full-time. If we had an engineer, we could offset, that significantly, depending on how many projects are going on. The more time he spends on the road, the less time he spends in the office.
Right.
So there are drawbacks to it, but you could theoretically save some money.
You're still going to have to outsource some of the engineering, right?
Absolutely, because they have a lot of resources available to them that we don't. So we would still, the in-house engineer could probably do some of the smaller jobs, what we used to do in the past, but we've been doing significant construction that is difficult to design with the materials that we have, and we don't have any computer drafting equipment. They leave a lot of that to the technicians at their office to do.
My only, you all set, Greg?
Yeah.
My only comment to the engineering piece is, he's a very expensive engineering company. We all know that. I mean, if we're gonna really concentrate on hiring a position, we need to take a look at that contract. I believe that, sometimes we're over-engineering some of our stuff, but that's my opinion. If we're seriously gonna take a look at adding a full-time engineer on our staff, we need to take a look at that contract. Very expensive.
I agree to a point. You get what you pay for. When we get out to construction, we have very minimal, if any, change orders on our projects. The roads work correctly, and I think we're going to get some very good longevity out of the road. So in the long run, it's the cheap part of the job, in my opinion.
Yep. Again, that's my opinion of it. I haven't seen some comparisons with the company we're using, Green, right now, and the other companies on contract. Just a comment.
All right. Capital's usually fun with you, Jim. What do you got?
The first thing is the major equipment and repair. I've increased that by $3,000. We're starting to find the repair costs are starting to become significant for just things that we do. We just had to change some springs on our 10-wheeler truck, and the cost was $4,400. We put 2 tires on our roadside tractor. That was $3,600. And it's, we're talking about a budget that's a year and a half away. It's hard to figure out what is potentially going to break on your vehicles.
Sure.
So that's,
A reasonable number based on the size of your
Did the frame
portfolio
get
there,
replaced
probably.
on the truck?
it did.
It was done, great.
Looks like this.
The next thing down is the municipal sidewalk tractor. The other one's a 2002. We do use that one year-round, not a lot, because we have a milling machine on it, which you got to see some of the benefits, Betsy, on Foster Street there.
Is that what you used to do that?
Well, that's to take the asphalt out.
Interesting.
It's a pretty big ticket item. I was kind of surprised at the price, actually. But that would get you the sidewalk tractor, a new snow blower, and a plow for the front. And if we bought this particular model, it could still take the attachments that we have for the existing tractor. It's the same make. So we could still, use some.
This is what you use to plow the sidewalks in the wintertime, too.
Yes. We have two machines. We have another one that has tracks on it, and they both have their advantages and disadvantages, but sidewalks are becoming a big issue. We plow about 14 miles. Depending on the depth of the snow, we either use the plow or the snow blower. The plow is a lot quicker than the snow blower, but the snow blower does a much better job. Again, depending on the depth of the snow, you could be out there 8 or 10 hours. We're starting to see some of the other towns now do the sidewalks at the same time. They just put people in them, like the town of Acton. They're plowing snow, they're plowing sidewalks. So they put 3 or 4 machines out during a storm. Because they do like 100 miles of sidewalk. So to be able to keep up. And sidewalks make a big issue because a lot of kids are walking to school. So if we can't get them done in a timely fashion, it can affect the school opening. Last year, we had the accident, so luckily they were able to get the machine back together so we could use it. That would have made a huge impact on us.
Well, last year Littleton had a lot less snow days than some of the surrounding towns, right? I thought, we didn't really do that much, did we, compared to some of them?
I think we're at
No?
4 or 5. They hit it at the right
Yeah,
time.
I just thought some
guess.
people seemed like they were a lot worse than that, so I keep giving credit to all you guys for doing a good job.
Hey, I have a question for you, Jim. So I'm looking at this quote from CN Wood for $6,000 for the plow and then another $14,000 for the blower. Do you need both?
Yes.
Because you said the parts are interchangeable. Can you use your existing plow, or?
We can, this plow is a little bit different. It's you can go in the V position, or it's a multi-position plow. So we find that it would work better to not fill people's driveways, depending on the conditions of the snow, which way you could use it. I mean, it's a lot of money, but we keep them for quite a while.
And you need them both? There's no
Yes.
way around it? Okay.
The next thing is to refurbish our equipment trailer. The wood deck needs to be replaced, needs to be painted, and the tires are dry rotted, and that's something that we're just gonna do in-house. We've done before. Kind of a good winter job for us. Still looking for a forklift. It's something that we can use basically for daily maintenance, moving things around. We get a lot of deliveries with the paint and different things, and I know the comment has been, go borrow the light departments, they're getting busier, and I'm not looking for a new one. Something like that would last us for quite a while. It would just make life easier for us. Asking for the road paver again, and again, that would be a used thing. It's something that we wouldn't use all the time, but we could go out and patch some roads with the existing crew that we have. It's hard to get companies to come in, and it's very expensive when you're just doing small jobs. They don't want to come in. So I know some of the other towns around us are getting them and using them, and it would be, beneficial to us. to
This isn't
have it.
replacement, this is just something new then.
Yeah, it would be new to our fleet.
You get room for all this stuff too? I mean, it's not an issue of housing all this stuff or anything?
No.
You make room. Will this save us money if we get a paver? I mean, because you said you contracted out to have paving done. I mean, have you done any analysis on that at all?
It would, it's going to cost you money and save you money. I mean, the companies that come in don't want to come in for small amounts, so then they don't come and you can't get the work done.
I see.
It's part of it. You can go out and, we have that milling machine. If you look at all the patches that we've done, that's all been done by hand. And it's time consuming and, but it's something that needs to get done. And, the company, if you hire a paver, he's going to get significantly more for the material, or he's going to charge you a per day price to get done what they can get done. And we can do it at our, you can rent one, and by the time you rent it, it's something like $5,000 a week to rent. It's crazy.
Better off just having the equipment readily available when you need it.
Does the machine do better than when you do it by hand? Does it last longer? Does it repair better or not? Just so you can do more.
You can do more. You get a better product, and it compacts it better than by hand. So, yes, it will last longer.
It's likely to get ripped up when the plows come through again.
Well, you gotta bring the plows in.
Excuse me, Jim, on the roads, it just dawned on me that you're having the roads assessment done now, or we're not somewhere in the process. When do you think the report will be ready to review and prioritize?
He's pointing.
Yeah, we're going to schedule that for the Selectmen's meeting on December 14th. We just met with the company StreetScan yesterday, and they unveiled an initial pass of what their data looks like. You really can't see this from here, but if it's in red, it's in the worst condition, and I'm pleased to see that some of the roads that we're programming to spend millions of dollars to improve are in red. And there's a lot more bells and whistles that go with that. It will lead us to at least a staff recommendation of prioritization for future projects, but we're just reviewing that now. And we've asked StreetScan to come to a selectmen's meeting and walk us through what it is, because it's kind of interesting.
December 14th?
Yeah.
And what is the time frame in terms of coming up with a result, and this is the recommendations and so on?
Well, sometime this winter, I would say, that we're already programmed for how our money's going to be spent for the next year or so. We've got, so if we're designing a new project, we wouldn't be doing that we're not doing that this fiscal year. We are in the design phase for the projects that are on our radar screen. If there's a new road that we're going to do, that we won't be undertaking that choice in the design phase this year.
For now, I understand that. In terms of, there's a lot of big things in our capital plan right now, and I just want to make sure if we're spending the money and doing all this, that's also part of that.
One of the statistics, and I'm not sure, we haven't tested it yet and against our own data, but one of the statistics the consultant shared with us, that based on their assessment of what's wrong with our road miles and the cost that they've come up with, that they say $12.5 million will just bring us up to a certain level of
Okay.
So we're going to test that and compare it against the real world.
That's
Yeah.
interesting, because I know last year you were looking for a database to replace VHB. Is this
Yeah.
what
This
you
is
came
it.
up with?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
Bonnie found this, looking at an article, and they
City of Beverly did it, I think Chelsea, there just Quincy, a handful of cities had done it. There was a technology developed by Northeastern University, and it's amazing to see. They've got we have a photograph now of every pothole that they have. It's like a Google type vehicle which went and photographed everything as it did some sort of sensor analysis of all of these parameters for road repair. And so we're just it's an awful lot of data that's at our disposal, and we're just trying to turn it into information. Right?
So since you have all this data, is that something that you can use for getting into some other train of thought here, the stormwater program?
Yes, we could. Good question, because we have all of our outfalls plotted on this database, so I click.
We're one step ahead on that.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, let
I
me
mean,
see if I
we should-
click. I'm not
Paid for it, might as well figure out
not
how to
all
use it.
that
Yeah.
proficient. Of course, since I'm on the spot now, I can't figure out
That's okay. That's
which
all right.
thing to press, but earlier I was playing with it, and you could just ask for a layer, and it would suddenly show you all of our outfalls on this database, so that's important information to have.
Good.
It'll be a great tool, not only for deciding the big picture of what roads to reconstruct, but also for day-to-day management of the highway department and how they spend their time with, maintenance.
Like always, these programs, when you have the experts come in and they set it all up, but then we have to maintain it going forward, and we prepared to do that?
Yes and no. It's, they maintain it on their database and keep the updates. You have to pay
So we
funding.
just pay for an ongoing
We pay a
maintenance?
subscription.
Okay, and they take
Yeah,
care of it for us?
I
Okay.
think
All right.
we
Just
have an
wanna make
annual
sure.
subscription cost of like
Just hate it when you spend a lot of money to
$5,000.
do something once, and then,
Like
6 months
EMG.
later, it's gone, and because it's not updated, but, okay, so that's great.
I also made the suggestion that since there are a number of municipalities that seem to be doing this all at once, it might be a good idea for them to set up a user group of, so that we can be in touch with our counterparts elsewhere, and as what we're finding, the highway people, once they get the tool, can see, well, gee, if can you do this for me? Can you give me this answer to this real-world question? So, and they were, the company's very interested in making their product as marketable as possible, so.
So it works.
So is the $5,000 subscription in Jim's budget for next year?
We haven't come to an agreement on, they're so new, they don't really know how to do that. The more clients they get, the cheaper it will be, and then depending on what we pick.
I can just see reserve fund transfer coming, that's all.
No, it's in the.
Yeah.
No, we wouldn't
It is.
need to, because we've got, $500,000 in the roadway budget, so we're covered.
Okay.
We would charge.
So
Take that out of
so
that.
you take it out of that, okay. As long as it's covered, it's covered.
So are they actively marketing other towns?
Yes.
Yes, they are.
So you need to do a salesman's job on that, help when you talk to those
Yeah, I
other...
mean, was it 15,000 we paid for this year? And that's charged to the highway road budget.
Roadways are 500,000? It's usually 9.
700,000 is the appropriation, and then there's Chapter 90.
Okay, yeah, because it normally around, okay. Okay, all right.
The interesting thing, I know kind of run late here, about that is it's all done through computers. If one thing discounts it, the other one picks it up, so they work together. Our old system was done all visually by a person driving the roads, and this takes all the politics out of it, and, and it evaluates everything exactly the same on every single road that you do. So each part of it helps the other part come up, and they did give us the quick, the pavement condition index on our roads currently is 65. We used to be between 73 and 75 in the last time we did it, which was 2006. So we are going back, but we're making some progress too.
Are they using the same criteria that VHB used?
Similar, but it's all through the computer. They look at the alligator crack in the potholes, the roughness of the road.
And when it comes time to prioritize a list of projects, you look at, well, which are the main roads that are used, the ones that are secondary or that are not our arterial thoroughfares, those won't score as well, even if they're in worse condition, if they don't get as much use, that those roads would score lower in a first cut at a prioritization.
Okay. Bill?
The last two things were the flatbed for our hook truck, which is something that we can put on and off the truck. It's just an accessory for the truck. We can put, catch basin blocks and different things on it to move around versus towing the trailer around, and makes our life easier. And the last thing is to replace our large 11-foot mower for the ball fields.
Because the current one's broken or it just needs to be replaced? It's
it's-
just not as good as it has
Yeah,
been.
it's starting to show its age.
So,
How many mowers do you have?
4. We have 3 small ones and 1 big one.
During the summer, are they all being used?
They could be. It depends on the staffing levels that we have. We try to put at least 3 of them out. Basically, what we've done is we keep the old mower. Now, we replaced one of our front deck mowers, and we kept the old one versus trading it in, so that if one breaks, we have, before we had 2 mowers, and one broke, we had 1 mower. So we've been trying to get redundancy, because they don't give you that much in trade, and they're still, you know, they're older, but still functional.
Jimmy, after the maintenance repair, which is a given, what would you sort of your top 3 priorities be
Well, these are listed in
in priority order? Okay, I don't have that particular.
It's in the book, but,
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
In the, where, in which tab?
It's under 12, I think, right? Is that where you are?
Yeah.
Yep. It's in there.
Couldn't find it. I missed it, I could see it, okay. All right, my problem.
All right, and just for my summary, that I'm going to kind of track as we go through here, in terms of people, your mission budget is 1 full-time engineer and 2 full-time park people.
yes, and then upgrade my
Oh,
office.
I'm there, that's right. Through the admin.
Jim, when Greg and I met with you a couple weeks ago, you indicated that the capital replacement components of the part of the building that you're in will now fall to you since the light department isn't going to
Yeah,
pick that up.
we're not really sure how that's going to work. Steve's alluding to, we're kind of a tenant in the building. We're not really sure. The light department technically owns the building, and we've moved from one side to the other. Now they're tightening their belts, so any big-ticket items, they don't want to pay for anymore. And they've gone to Bonnie and said, we're not paying for that. We have never really had a budget for building maintenance, because it's always been done by someone else. And now we're just not, it's not clear what we're supposed to pay for and what we're not.
Okay. How do we address that going
Keith,
forward?
sounds like that, we need to put that on our agenda. We'll do a
Yeah.
joint meeting with the commissioners and we'll hash that out.
We actually have a lot of.
Yes, we
issues
do.
to talk to them about.
Yes, we do.
So that's-
And we can get an MOU out there so we know exactly what the
Yeah.
town is responsible for. That shouldn't be an issue. I think if they're tightening their belt up, we need to know what they're doing as far as.
Yeah, and it was,
There's some other issues around IT, for example, that
Yes.
they're going to be contracting out, and that has impacts on us.
We can get that, schedule that on one of our meetings in probably the first of the year.
Sure.
Do you have any big issues right now?
our roof is leaking.
Over the garage or over the
In the
offices?
office. So they've been trying to fix it, but it hasn't worked, so
It's all one continuous roof, so.
Any
Wow.
of those types of budgetary issues will be budgeted under public buildings.
Yep.
So we wouldn't, put it in the highway budget.
Still need to hash out an MOU.
We need to know that
Right.
it goes in this budget versus Scott's budget.
the simple version they've said is Jerry, their maintenance guy, can still do the things that he does. It's more of the big ticket items, like they just replaced the air conditioning unit that we've had trouble with forever. And, if we had to replace the roof, they would not want to do that. Basically, they said he can still do painting and, grounds maintenance and things like that. It's more of the bigger money items.
We kind of need to stay on schedule, but now I am curious about just the whole building and how that fits in, because it's a light department, so it's not really a town department, and so how does that whole thing work anyway?
Yeah, we're going to have to look at that.
That's part of this other discussion? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Anything else for Jim? Because we need to,
Well, as part of that discussion, Jim,
Yes.
as part of that discussion, I would ask, the question is, what do they do for maintenance for the water department?
Sure.
Because if it's light department building, the water department and the highway department are tenants, if you will.
Well, water department is part of their enterprise, so, I mean,
Well,
But
part,
no,
yeah,
no,
one of the
they're
issues that
separate.
the auditor had
Financial.
identified is that if there is any financial support that the light department provides for the water department, that really, they can't give it directly. It needs to go to the town.
Arm's
It needs
length
to go to the
transaction
town.
stuff, yep.
And then the town can give it to water, that's determined.
But they're taking care of their, the light department's taking care of their building.
Building, right.
If they're taking care of their building for the water department, different than they're taking care of the building for the highway department. I think that's part of the discussion
we can
there.
absolutely make it part
Okay.
of the discussion.
Okay, very good.
Good.
Anything else for Jim? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. That's good work.
Number 14.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Let's hope we can be faster than Jim.
Get as big as my department.
Yes, Jim, I know, you get everything, I get the crumbs, but that's okay. Nothing has really changed this year too much. Our budget is good. I'm not looking for anything long-range as far as staffing or anything else. The only basic increases are step raises and normal yearly contract things. The only one thing that I am looking for this year is the replacement of a 20-year-old backhoe. It's becoming a matter of necessity as it is starting to fail. And we looked into refurbishing it at one point, and it was in the $30,000 range. And a replacement, given the time frame, is going to be like $75,000. And when we looked at the refurbishing, we didn't take into consideration the transmission and the parking brake system, which is in question as to how much longer they're going to last. So it's a matter of priority that we do swap this one out and as soon as possible.
And once you do the help, what's the life, number of years that you expect to get out of it?
Well, we got 20 years out of this one.
Okay.
So we don't work a backhoe as hard as most people do. I mean, we're digging graves. We don't use it to plow with anymore. We do everything with snow blowers, so there's a lot of less wear and tear than a normal construction company would have, of course. And
And your building is okay now?
the building is good. We finally have signed the contract to change the heating and air conditioning system. That should take place within a couple of weeks or so. We're still having a wicked problem with the birds eating holes through the siding. I'm beside myself to see the damage they do, but I can't come up with any solution. I mean, right in the front of the building, they pecked 4 new holes. So birds peck right through. It's a
They're doing it out
They're
at
doing-
town hall, so, out and
I
back.
have the same problem in my house.
Yeah, but it's
I'm
an indication
attacked
that-
by woodpeckers
Yeah,
every day.
yeah, the woodpeckers are doing it this time. Was the sparrows, somebody else.
This is the drive-it system that we just
Yes.
replaced?
Right.
Yeah.
And I noticed the town hall has the same problem too.
Yeah.
I walked in the front door and there's all these little styrofoam,
Yeah.
big hole in there. So if anybody can come up with a solution, I would really appreciate that.
I told Bill Cole to put mothballs in the holes.
Okay, that might take care of the 4 existing
Yeah.
holes, but then they
I
still
know,
do another
but we'll move over.
It's like, trying to get doing this.
Craig, I have the same problem, and
Uh-huh.
I actually just had an exterminator can't do anything for woodpeckers or goose drones, but, because it's a federally protected species, but this guy said that the only thing, you can do hangy, swirly things,
Right.
shiny things, you
Try
have to
it.
move them every 4 or 5 days, and he said if you can find big plastic spiders, like you hang out for Halloween, for some reason, the one thing that he's seen the most success with has been big plastic spiders.
I'll go to the dollar store and look for
There you
something.
go.
Well, that's fitting for a
He
cemetery.
knows it works. They even put a big owl up there, you can sit on the owl's head and say, come on, my guys, I'm supposed to be afraid of this.
Yeah, really?
We have pie plates
Wow,
and
what about
string
it?
and all.
Oh, wow.
We're trying, but I mean, it really looks terrible when you
Fit- yeah,
drive
okay, everything too,
the
yeah.
main building. What are you doing? No, but,
Question.
so,
Any other
that's
questions,
about,
comments? Anybody?
Yes. Your project from
Spider
last
line.
year, opening up a new area of the cemetery?
yes,
Is that finished?
I have to go do a burial in about 20 minutes. Yes, it is finished. It's, this will be the second burial. We have, we started with just opening a very small spot. I think there's 15 graves in it. Next week, we're putting on another 85 in our mapping system, so it'll be like 90 graves available in the new section. And that's going to hold us for quite a while. And that's only just a small piece of the new section that's available. We still have probably another 300 graves that we could open in the part that's already grassed and ready to go, so we're in really good shape on that.
And you're still running sort of in the 50 to 60 a year internments?
It looks like today will bring us up to 48 burials. This is November. Yeah, we'll still be around 50, 51. That's hard to say. Hopefully everybody stays above ground, but
There you go.
I don't know.
And the percentage of cremations going up versus?
No, actually, the percentage is a little bit less this year. We've had, well, this will be 48 burials, and we've had 16 of them as cremations, so it's dropped off quite a bit this year. But,
Any idea why on that? That seemed to be a big trend for quite a while.
yeah, it was, for the last, I think it was the 3 years, it was steadily going up. And now, this year, it's down a little bit, but I mean, it's still, everybody talks about it, and everybody's, I ask the people, what do you feel you'll do? A lot of people buy a grave in advance of, using it, and they say they want to be cremated. So, and so it's still a very popular thing. I still wish we had a crematorium, but that's another subject altogether. We won't get into that.
That's not
We should look
that's
into
not
that,
my
form a
project.
The only problem with the cremations
Times
is
change.
we
There's new
do
technologies out there, too.
lose money on them. We had to adjust our prices somewhat to compensate for that, but the cemetery basically joined, their revenue is derived from selling graves. With one grave, you can now put in 4 cremations. So we're not selling as many lots as we used to. So like I say, we've made a slight adjustment for that. And things have been, the budget has worked out really well, and I have been able to put some money in our, what's the word I'm looking for?
Retained revenue?
Yes,
One?
thank you.
Okay.
Little blue. So that's a big help. The years past, we haven't been putting too much in, but that's turned around. So everything's working really well. We have
just have-
good machinery now.
Oh, I'm sorry. You all set? I just have one quick question for Bonnie. Bonnie, didn't we do the refurbishment? Didn't we allocate money for the refurbishment? We
Yeah,
never
it was
did?
requested last year, but it wasn't funded.
Okay.
So it didn't hit the list.
Yes,
I would
that's
also
fine.
note that on the budget offsets, there's 43,000 or almost 44,000 that's used in transfers against the sanitary budget. We were looking at this last year because the revenues were down, and it looks like they have rallied from
have.
that point. Just as an example, looking at the Graves account, there was 15,000 brought in revenue in 14, and we transferred out almost 20. But last year, we got 26 in and transferred out almost 19. And the same thing for the sale of lots. In 14, it was 8,100 in revenue brought in, and 12,000 was transferred out as an offset. So we were worried last year at this time. But in 15, they brought in almost 16,000 in revenue against that $12,000 transfer. So the fee changes seems to have addressed that.
So it's working well.
Okay,
All right, so
very good.
give me a
Anybody else?
tobacco and I'll be happy and out of your hair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have
All
a
right.
good day.
Thank you.
Tab, you on 10? All right, tab 10.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
What's your name again?
try to run you through this quick.
You want to go to the color presentation?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, we'll start off with that, run through, and what questions after. So basically, some of the beginning, it just goes over our current staffing, how we're staffed right now with the chief, the deputy, fire prevention, members of our 24-hour staff, cover the station services that we provide, multiple 911 emergency medical responses, hazardous materials, fire inspections, fire prevention, public outreach in the schools with seniors. Look at our community growth and the increase in service demands. We go, the last fiscal year, we've increased our run volume a little over 150. We're about at 1,644 runs for the last fiscal year. That's emergency, calls for emergency services.
Where are you, Scott, right now in 16? Are you on track?
We're on track to be up, it's still in that,
15?
about 100, it's growing by about 100 a year, so 100 to 150, give or take.
Medical versus,
We're about 75% medical.
okay.
And how much of that is like town residents versus highway accidents and things?
As far as the medicals, the majority are residents or between, say, Shattuck Street, 191 Foster, the older generation. We do have a lot of crashes, but with the technology right now, it seems like we're doing less transports from the crashes because of the, the airbags, the seat belts, all the safety restraints. So
But the calls will still be, you still have to go.
We
You just
still
don't
have
do
to
the
go.
transport, but you still get the
Correct.
call to go.
Correct, yep. And then when you look at our, again, we still struggle with the staffing challenges. Back around 2000, we had 62 members on the call department, and right now we're at about 24. And by the end of the year, we'll actually be at 20. We've been made aware of potential 3 more departures.
But do you, do we have staff, so in terms of, because you have so many more full-time people now, like how many calls do most of these on-call, how, do you want them to come or not come, or are they going out more often, or?
It's actually increased. Yes, we do have more full-time, but there's only 2 that are around the clock. So that's still only 2 members, and they still need to be backed up by the call department.
Okay.
So when 2 guys roll out to a crash in the middle of the night in the ambulance, they still need the call department to come pick up the truck. There may be extrication, spills, things of that nature that they need, still need the backup
Okay.
for. It just, there are, as time moves on, everyone's lifestyle changes, and they don't have that commitment that they used to have. They used to be able to, we used to get 7, 8, 10 years out of them. Now we get about 2 or 3. And then they get married, they can't afford to stay in town anymore, the younger generations, and then they move on. So it's tough to retain them. And they used to be able to leave work and come do emergencies during the day. They do that now, they get fired. So times have changed, and we're feeling those effects. It's not just us, all the surrounding towns are feeling the same issues.
Where do you go for recruitment, Scott?
We go on Facebook, Twitter. We do things on our open house. We have a program that we run on the cable channel, advertising for it. We just had one graduate last week, or 2 weeks ago, and I have 3 scheduled to go in March. So the way the class rotation is, they're scheduled to go in March. We still won't see them for 5 months after that. So it's a long process to have new members come in.
Your Explorer post is pretty active too, right?
It's very active. I think there's about 14 members in it right now. A lot of them are much younger. So we still need to wait for them to hit that 18 point, and then I honestly, half of our department came from the Explorer post. Including me, yes. So it's a decent program that we can get the benefits from. It all takes time.
A new technology that I've been using, Glassdoor.com. It's really cool. You can cater searches, and it's just a job finder like a Monster or LinkedIn, but it's the new coolest one. So just throwing that out there. I really like it.
Glassdoor.com.
Yeah.
Some of the other challenges that we had over the last year is mutual aid, our second medicals. We had mutual aid ambulances in 66 times last year. And that's mostly due to the fact that either we're tied up on calls. We have a lot of back-to-back calls. And honestly, I think we're up to about 9% of our run volume is back-to-back. We've had a huge spike in the last year. So when we're tied up, say on the highway, we rely on call members to come back and pick up their second ambulance, but typically they're not available during the day, so we rely on mutual aid ambulances to come in, and that would result in the potential of lost revenue for us. So one of the other challenges that we have is our ALS. ALS, the Advanced Life Support, that comes out of Emerson. Typically, that's run by Pro Ambulance, and they are run out of Acton or Lincoln. During the day, they typically both satellite out of Lincoln and Concord because that's the busiest area. And it takes up to 10 minutes for them to come to town. So while we're on scene in that 1 to 4 minute range, we're still waiting an additional 6, 7, 8 minutes for them. So one of the proposals that we're going for our mission budget this year is to add 5 medics in July. We would add 4 medics, 1 to each shift, and then 1 flex position, similar to when we went around the clock. By adding that 1 flex position from 6A to 6P that would work 4 days on, 4 days off, that flex position would actually fill the first vacancy for any medic that goes out on vacation or class or something like that. So it would result in an overtime savings because that's, we would just relocate that flex person from his regular shift to that vacancy. And the other benefit is we would be able to have a better service to our residents, instantly. When we're on scene in that 1 to 4 minutes, we can put a cardiac monitor on them. We can, depending on what the incident is, we can administer drugs, different medications. And it would also change our, potentially change our destination. And we'd be on the road several minutes before, instead of waiting for the paramedics to come from a different location and then start things 8 or 9 minutes later.
Scott, could you explain the math to me? 4 paramedics, 1 to each working shift. Is the working shift 6 hours? Or?
24 hours. So right now we have 4 shifts of 2. They do 24 hours on, 48 hours off, 24 hours on, 4 days off. So there's 4 shifts of 2 that complete an 8-day work week.
Okay.
And there would be 1 of those assigned to each shift.
Okay.
And then the flex position, like I said, we currently have a flex position that works 4 days, 4 12-hour days. We would add a second, and that would do another 4 days of 12 hours. So we'd have a continuous additional person potentially from 6A to 6P during our busier times.
So today, what happens on the 4 days that you don't have the flex person?
So we run shorter. Like on a weekend, we have 2 spots from 8 to 4 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday, and we reserve those for the call department. The first year that we did it, which we'll go through some numbers shortly, and you'll see some of the numbers that our first year we struggled. We were only able to fill 1 of those positions because call members just didn't have the time to fill them. And currently we are filling them with per diems, but 1 of those spots would be eliminated with that additional flex person. So like I was saying, we would be looking to increase the staffing. It improves our medical technology. It brings a better service to town, to the residents. The residents know who we are. They have more confidence in our abilities, and to provide a better service. As we kind of, sorry, I'm just kind of paging through these to skim it in the essence of time. You look at the first color graph. Since we went to 24-hour shifts, it shows our average response time is from 1 to 4 minutes, compared to at the time before when we went around the clock, it was 9 to 17. That was unacceptable. So we've achieved our goal with that. On the next page, you'll see the graph for ALS intercept times. On the bottom is our average response times from the 1 to 4 minutes, and our ALS response times, where the range is anywhere from 7 to 13 minutes, depending on where they're coming from and the time of the day. So that alone is something huge. That's a service that we could provide several minutes ahead of schedule. So now we come down to the numbers. On the first page, one of the issues that we have with Pro is they have a very poor collection rate. And they don't bill out, they're not aggressive with their billing cycle. So what we did, we're proposing to change to a different billing company. We took our 2014 stats and supplied them to that billing company. And based off of those numbers, running down the list, in 2014, we had 400 BLS calls, 300 ALS calls. We're trying to be very conservative with the numbers, so they only charged 3 miles for transports. Typically, we charge 10 miles. It's 9 to 10 miles from Emerson or to Neshoba, depending on where we're going from in town. And you can also see with the different, Oxygen, Airways, IV, we didn't add any additional costs with that. Again, trying to be conservative. So we based it off of 700 runs. And if we did 700 runs through this other billing company, based off of their current collection rate on surrounding towns is between 91 and 93%, we would be looking at anticipated collections of 634, where right now as BLS, we bring in about 324 a year. So it's a little bit more than doubling. And again, that's being conservative. We only did 700 runs. So on the next page,
I got a quick question. Before you go.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Adjustments. I look at the bottom line, projected invoicing of $1.1 million, but adjustments of about 50% of that. What is adjustments?
So adjustments are typically what insurance companies will actually pay. Okay? We can go out and bill.
Gotcha.
And, all right.
Deal with them all the time. No, it's like-
Okay.
Okay.
So my quick question, if I could, this anticipated collection amount of $634,000, you said it was based on 91 to 93%. Did you use the lower end of that or the higher end of that?
Actually, we use 90%.
So you use 90%?
They are currently billing between Air and Westford. I believe it was 93% in Westford, and last year was 91% with the town of Air, is what they had collected for
So
them.
it's a little bit conservative?
Yes, trying to.
So what is the collection rate currently with the provider that you use?
64%?
This is a company that we used in the past, Coastal, before we went to Pro EMS, so we're familiar with them, and I recognize that the collection ratio has dropped off since we went to.
This has nothing to do with adding paramedics, though, right? This is a separate topic?
We're getting there.
Okay.
He's already got the money spent. The
All right,
100%
go to your next page.
Scott,
Okay.
Why?
I've got one more question. Did they give a reason why they're at 64%?
When we originally went to them, granted, that was before I started here, they told everybody up front that they are not an aggressive collection company. They are aggressive to collect their ALS revenues, but they are not aggressive to collect our BLS revenues because they don't get any benefit out of that. So there's not a hard push for them to.
Why are we still doing business with them?
So
That's why we're doing this right now.
By way of history, when we were with Emerson, Emerson stopped providing the service, and Pro stepped in and said, we'll take it over for you.
Correct.
And they made it seamless, but at a cost.
They did make it seamless, and at that cost, they do all of our billing. They keep track of all of our medical records. They are in control of our medical software, as well as our education. So they paint a nice picture to say, we'll take care of you and take care of all of this stuff.
Now we've identified
And
what's.
exactly. Now that we've actually looked at all of the numbers and the benefits that we can say, we can reap these benefits and improve our department and improve our services to the town and potentially,
So does
increase
this
the
include
revenue.
all those other services that these guys are doing for you then? Okay, moving right along, okay.
Next page, paramedic projections. At the top, you can see the 634. Based on the 700 calls, it averages out to $906 per call. Looking at last year, we had 966 medicals. 804 of those were billable. So taking those and those averages, that would have been an estimated, per coastal, $729,000 in revenue that we could have potentially taken in. When we go down...
Is that at the 90% or is that,
Correct.
okay. We're still working 90%.
So then you look down, we had an estimate from Coastal, or a quote, and they originally said that they would charge us 4.5% for billing for the first 6 months, and then drop to 4% going forward. We used a rate of 5%, again, trying to stay conservative with these numbers. So that would have given us an anticipated collection of roughly 692,000 in change. So, on the bottom half of the page, the cost of 5 medics. 4 of them would be at $48,488, and 1 of them would be at $56,574. And the reason for that one difference is that that medic would be the EMS coordinator. That person is responsible for ordering drugs, medications, keeping up with state protocols, making sure everybody in the department keeps up with their certifications. So it's a significant added responsibility, and that's why there's that one different position. So that alone is $257,196, including fringe. Fringe is $15,258 per person, with a total of $76,293. Additionally, on top of that, for just over $2,500, we would create 4 lieutenants, 1 lieutenant for each shift, for accountability and responsibility on those. So that brings our total up to $336 and change. By having that flex position and these lieutenants, the lieutenants alone, we would be eliminating the on-call officer program. Right now, we pay $4 an hour for an officer to be responsible for the night from 6P to 6A. They're at home. We may not have that need. So we'll be taking that $17,520 and a little bit of the money from the per diem line, because we have a flex position that'll be rolling through. It gives us about a $22,500 for credit that we can put towards at those 5 medics. So including fringe, the cost is $313,512.
So if we go back to the fringe number.
Yep.
We had this discussion a little bit earlier, around 35%. Just run some quick numbers on this. And I don't know if you're using an average of what you're doing, but if I look at the 4 medics at $48,000, that fringe is about 31%, but the 1 at $56,000 is only 27%. How did you come up with that number?
I did, when we first were discussing it, I used 33%, and I used 33% for all 5. That one the added position was an increase on, it was actually a different step.
It's still low, though, if you use 33%.
In the chief's defense, when we talked about this about a month ago, I hadn't recalculated the fringe for this fiscal year. So in going through the budget process, I've adjusted for what the fringe is for this fiscal year. It's between 34 and 36. So we'll adjust that as we move forward.
A little bit, okay.
Okay, cool, thanks.
But on the short term, what can be done to increase our collections rate? I mean, $200,000 is real money.
Yeah.
On the short term.
Fred, you took my thunder, actually. And to add to what Fred just said, as far as fixing an issue, and it's a real issue, it's real money, I think that's got to be a priority, period.
Yep.
Period. And I understand you're a paramedic. You've been talking about it for a year or so. Personally, I'd like to see that fixed, see what the real revenues are. Not on these estimates?
What does that contract with Pro obligate them to do for us? What if they didn't want to collect any of it? I mean, do we have a contract, or maybe our
Yeah, that's
attorney
what I
can
don't
go
know,
after
but-
them and saying, you're not doing what you contracted to do?
We are in an agreement with them.
Yeah, and we're in a group of communities, I forget what the name of it is.
Yeah, the Samara.
Concord is the lead town, but we're not, I would say we're not in it alone, but I don't know what the collection history is of like Carlisle or
But-
Concord or the.
But even if all the towns had to get together and hire somebody to do it, I mean, that's a lot of money.
So right now, the benefit out of all of this is they pay for the software upgrades. They have the software. They're providing every town with training. They're taking care of the billing. So they've eliminated all of that from the big picture for everybody. And for the bigger, busier towns, they're like, well, great, I don't have to worry about it. And,
But they're not collecting.
exactly. Again, one of the other things that's different
If
with
we're
each
200,000,
town.
what is Concord? Concord's got to be a hell of a lot more than that.
Significantly.
I can provide a little bit of background. Having been here when we made the transition several years ago, Pro came in, again, at a time where Emerson was discontinuing service and we were kind of in a bind. And they picked up the ALS, and they required that they do the billing and provided these other services. And what they did is, we were billing at Medicare plus 60% at the
Right.
time. They increased it to Medicare plus 200, I think.
Yes.
And then, and said, we will take care of the billing, and put right out front, we're not an aggressive biller, but this will preserve your revenue stream. And I had some concerns, and I know Bill Mercandall doesn't think I'm a very nice person over there. But that's what they put out. They were very open about it. You know, we had some real concerns with it at that time, but that was what they felt that they could do to preserve the current revenue stream. I agree that I think the collections should be more aggressive.
But we've got a contract with them, it must say something about that, right? I mean, this...
Is Pro doing anything to address their shortfall? I mean, obviously...
They don't see it
They
as a
don't see it as a
priority.
shortfall because
Really?
they'll
They're
bill.
making their
That's all
money.
they committed to.
Right. Our revenue stream over the
gonna
last
lose
5 years since we
business.
implemented with them really hasn't changed.
It has stayed stable, but we've changed our billing rates from Medicare plus 60 to Medicare plus 200 to do that. So,
Sounds like it's
So
time to cut
we-
bait.
our billing
So we're-
rate,
so if we
our
were
success rate
collecting,
went from this to this,
Right.
but our rate went from this to that. So, I
Correct.
mean,
We
that-
built to this, and then we're still collecting the same.
So, you know, going forward and looking at, comparing some of the other towns with switching to the paramedic program, we're at about 64% of the calls are, I'm sorry, 43% of our calls are ALS. When Air and Westford switched over, and for the first couple of years that they did their program, they increased their ALS rates to roughly 75%. So if we go from 43 to 75% on our ALS revenue, that's a significant increase that we didn't add in here. Again, I mean, these numbers are, we try to stay as conservative as we can with these.
Excuse me, Chief, but there are two different issues here. One is,
Yes.
you know, what is the most efficient way to provide the service to the citizens of Littleton? The second one is, how do we generate, or how do we collect the revenue that we're due and we're not collecting? So I'm with Jim on this. I mean, that has to be job one, and not necessarily specifically you, but for the administration, come back with a recommendation. What do we do to increase our collection rate to what it should be?
100%.
We're just leaving money on the table year after year.
I don't understand why it isn't in their best interest to do aggressive collections, since Air, Westford, several other communities have gone to ALS that you're proposing here, and I'm certain that Concord probably is thinking the same thing. These guys are going to go out of business if all the surrounding towns do their own ALS.
If you don't complain, Alan, they're going to continue marching on.
When they first took over their system to do ALS, it was originally painted as a temporary picture, and that they would encourage each of the towns to go ALS, and they would be there to assist them in doing that transition. It all depends on the administration in each community and whether or not they wish to pursue it.
Sounds like an opportunity here.
It's a lot of work that goes into it, and whether or not, you know, I can only speak for myself and the direction we'd like to go in.
Well, again, it's two different issues.
Yep, definitely. So, again, as I was saying, some of those preliminary numbers, when they went to ALS, they went up as high as 75%. After that 2 years, they averaged it out. 65% is what they currently run as an ALS service. Like I said, we're running 43 right now, and that's for multiple reasons. Sometimes we don't need to wait, you know, have the delay waiting for them, and we can have a quicker transport, or we'll meet up with Westford or Air. Looking on to the next page, some of the capital costs that are associated with changing to this is the ability to, you know, buy our own software, buy monitors, cardiac monitors, various medications and equipment for each ambulance, yearly training for ALS and BLS providers. And that total upgrade would be about $140,000 to get us to ALS.
Chief, on the software, who would be responsible for administering, supporting, training the software piece?
Right now, so the software program that we have, it wouldn't change. We just would break away from Pro and
Gotcha.
have,
Just
they,
different tool, same mechanism to support it.
exactly. They do offer a different type of program that's more affordable for small providers like us than what Pro is offering.
So this software, the database resides elsewhere, not in the fire department?
Correct. Right now, it resides with Pro. If there's any medical records that we want for the last basically 6 years, we need to go to Pro to get that.
Do they charge you a fee for that?
No.
Did I?
No. Well, not that we're aware of. It might be included in the cost. So going forward, here's our basic budget. In the FY17 level staffing, it accounts for contractual obligations. There's no big change in there. Going on to the next page, the salaries for the firefighters. You see the increase on there for the mission budget. That includes the 5 medics, as well as 5 promotions to lieutenant.
You're much faster than I am. Hey, where are you?
Sorry.
All right.
You can see the void on the page for where we would remove the officer on call. That's funding that would go into that, the salary line. And then at the bottom, it's a slight decrease in the salaries or per diem that was originally underfunded because we weren't able to fill the shifts. And it would be right on par to have one person fill that shift. Again, a little more of a review on how we get there. Add 5 cost-neutral paramedics to the program and promote 4 lieutenants for accountability and responsibility on each shift. Looking at 2017,
But again, just to be clear, the cost neutral is, it's not just because you're billing for them, but because we're going to get better recovery with a new service. So we
Absolutely.
combine these two together here
Yes.
again. Okay,
Yes.
just want to be clear.
yep.
Yep.
Change in
Okay.
billing, change in service, increased
All right.
revenue, and a better return. And then looking at 2017, just kind of review, take that year to make sure our medic program is working properly. And then, again, hopefully, if everything is working properly, we'll have the ability to generate a little more revenue so that we can actually achieve our staffing goal and have 4 on shift around the clock. But, that's, some hopeful, wishful thinking. Looking
So,
forward.
not to belabor this too much, but up here, so they're cost neutral again, but now we've already got the new system in place. So here, is it cost neutral just for what you're billing for the paramedics, or are you adding in the savings that we're getting for all the other runs, for the EMT runs that we're not collecting enough on?
Everything. It's looking at the big picture. We're changing the
Right.
entire billing system, as well as providing a better service for,
Okay, and then you still think if you do that in 18, you could hire 3 people, knowing everything else now is level? It's
gonna take us 2 years to
They're still going to be
evaluate.
cost neutral, but you don't, okay, that's what you're going to
right,
say. Okay.
right. That's
All
why
right.
we have that year in the middle with no
see
change, so
whether
that we
that
can
really is.
evaluate it, and if it holds true, that would be, that's what we're looking at.
But if we can increase the collection rate in the short term, even if we said that's found money, quote unquote, we could put that aside in an enterprise fund to help buffer any potential startup costs for this program.
And that's why it's such a priority right now to get that done.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
get that
I'm
done.
emailing all of my counterparts
Yes.
in that group right now.
Get
Just
that
to see
done.
what that is.
Just hire
You know,
somebody to go and start?
the intent, depending on the feel of the board and everything, was to at least put Samara on notice that we would be looking to break away in July because it requires a 6-month notice to break away from them.
Well, that's fire shot across their bow on collections first.
Yep.
Yeah. It'll go out.
They've had 3 years to prove
If
themselves.
they know we're leaving, then they might not be as anxious if they think we're just considering leaving.
Well, they did supply us with all the numbers. That's how we were able to come up with those numbers. We told them that, yeah, this is what we're pursuing, and so they were
They're just
honest
shooting
with their
themselves
numbers.
in
And
the foot.
well, like I said, in the very beginning, they were looking at trying to have all the towns pursue their own paramedic program, and this was looked at as a potential temporary thing. But so many of the towns are very comfortable with it and don't have the desire to do the change, then it'll continue the way it runs. So looking at our summary, again, add 5 promotions on each group and try to meet the town's expectations. On the next, we're on to capital. Anybody have any questions on main budget?
As long as, I mean, after hearing your presentation, again, for me, fix the billing, go a year, see what that revenue is, then possibly roll out your paramedic program, so we can have a clearer picture as to your revenue stream coming in. That's all I'm saying. But other than that, it looks good.
One of the cons with that would be, now we would have increased, or the potential of increased cost, because now we have to pay them for a service, hire a training company, and still buy our software without,
Look at the paramedic revenue.
But there are other services available other than Pro.
Right.
Right?
We would still have a contract with Pro to provide our ALS service, and our backup would be Westford and Air. just
So
like
what
it
you're
is
saying
now.
is, if we take the billing away from Pro, we gotta pay for some other stuff,
Correct.
which should be able to, I mean, is it gonna cost you the 300,000? I'm gonna round off Fred's number to 300,000 to take care of those 12,000 here and,
For their 300 ALS calls, their revenue on that was 198,000. That was their collection. So,
I should be able to pull up with 198,000. Okay.
sorry. On capital, the first three, the major equipment, 15,000, the modular building, 6,000, and the protective clothing replacement, those, for the 12, those are the reoccurring. After that is the design for the new fire station coming up in the spring for 530,000. That was the newest number that we had from Corel. After that, our mission budget, the $140,000 for adding advanced equipment for the ALS. And then we have replace engine 3 for $35,000. Originally, we were looking for $150,000 to do that. That's been on our last 3 capital requests to kind of maybe downsize with a pickup truck and skid tanks and ATVs to make things a little bit more functionable. Right now, we're actually looking at, the military has the surplus equipment, and that truck is basically available and should be delivered to us sometime within the next week. And Lane, similar, it's a Steve Stetson, or a...
With a 50 cal.
Lancaster just recently did one and did a rehab on it, and it came out pretty nice. So for $35,000, we can use that vehicle and paint emergency lights, put a skid tank in the back of it, skid tank and portable pump, and some, toolboxes in the back to hold our equipment. And we'd be able to get some pretty good life out of that.
But did you just say it was going to be delivered next week or next month or something?
It's free. The vehicle itself is free. It's military surplus.
Oh, I see.
So it's already, they're done with it because,
All right, so this is just to...
they've been taking it
put
out.
the other stuff on.
And, yeah, that $35,000 would be to outfit and change that truck.
What are
And
you going to do with the old one?
It'd be my recommendation to auction it off. We've had some discussion with some of the other manufacturers of apparatus, and that's what they recommended. They said there's some, up in Maine, there's a request for some of the smaller vehicles like that.
Scott, for the design of the fire station renovation, this 530, where are we now? Are we in schematic or 30% design, or where are we currently? Is this schematic design?
Yeah.
So this will take us up to 100%
This will be full design,
documents.
right.
Okay.
Yep.
And refresh my memory, how much have we already spent on this? It's a couple of
$9,000?
Oh, I thought there was more than that, no?
No, just short,
No.
there's been no design.
$9,000 for
No
the
design
feasibility
funds,
study,
no
and
fire station.
in that feasibility study was the conceptual design of which Corel did. They've gone through, I believe about 5 different versions, multiple meetings with residents in the neighborhoods to actually come to a design that somewhat fits the neighborhood. And that's where we're at right now.
And Steve, normally, what percentage of a project is
About 8%.
designed? About
Yeah.
8%. So they're still looking at a 7 plus or minus project, is what that number says.
That would indicate, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And that would include this fair market wage, the 8%?
Prevailing wage?
Yeah,
Well,
prevailing wage, yeah.
Yeah.
30%
That's still okay.
cost of the construction, easy.
Okay.
Across the board.
All right, the state big.
The final thing on the capital is the 300,000, which will replace our SCBA.
What was that CBA again?
Self-contained breathing apparatus, which are on all of our trucks. Right now, we're 3 versions out from the original. The other thing, like you can see, it's on the end of our priority list. We're also going to be applying for the federal grant. And with a little bit of luck, a few of the local communities have received that grant, and we're using some of their application. And hopefully we'll have somebody prove it for us. And
That's something
have
new
a
on
little
the
bit
list,
better
though.
luck.
We haven't seen that in the past 3-5 years.
No, nope.
But there is a useful life, and at some point, you can no longer get these certified.
We have
correct?
4 years. In 4 years, this is done. We need to buy all new bottles. We need to,
So we need to start planning for it. It might not be this year, but we need to make sure that we have something.
absolutely, correct. So,
Is it something that can be phased through the 4 years in
Um,
1%, right? Or does it have to be?
it would be better off that it was all changed, because every couple of years they change their models and the styles, NFPA requirements. So we would rather have them all the same instead of, say, a third of them
Okay.
this model and a third of them a newer generation.
Different
so that-
training, too.
Exactly.
Yep.
Everybody needs to be on the same page. When they can hop into any truck, they will need to have the
Yep.
identical equipment. So, and the last slide, or the last page in there was just the fire station timeline that the board had voted on January 6th of 2014 with the 600 borrowing for design, but that's actually the 530 that was requested in the capital budget. Going through design work, completed July through October, November through February. Hopefully the bid documents can be prepared and sent out, and then due in March. Come back for spring of 17, hopefully for construction.
Chief,
And
what's
the
the
same
delta
question I
of
had
the-
for Jim, that the capital is in your prioritized order?
Yes.
Okay. And if we could do the SCBA, you'd like to have it. If we can't, maybe that's a candidate to put some money into capital stabilization earmarked. Over 3 years, we could pay for SCBA. You know, I don't know. But if we've got 100 grand and we can't buy a third, we put it away until we've got 300 grand, and then you buy it all.
So looking at the
That'd be an opportunity.
the capital list, one of the big ticket items that was on for this year that we bumped out
Yeah.
due to the potential construction of the station is the ladder truck.
Right.
Ladder truck should have been up for this year, and bumping
Wondering
that
about
out, that's $1.2 million for that truck, for its replacement. And
But you bumped it 2 years, right, according to,
we bumped it out to looking at it for next year, which would,
on top of the
on top of,
station.
would be a year of construction. So it wouldn't be here until after the new station was
After the
done,
station's
because
done,
the
yeah.
potential, it wouldn't fit in the existing quarters right now.
We wouldn't want to get it wet.
I'm not going to leave that outside for 8 months.
$1.2 million, thank
No.
you very much.
Exactly.
We had explored that there was a federal grant opportunity for a region. An individual municipality couldn't do it, but if you could apply on a regional basis for a ladder truck, we could have gotten about all of that money. we would have happily hosted the vehicle, but we were not able to identify a neighboring community.
That's
We'd be
interesting
happy to
flag,
have
huh?
the vehicle hosted.
Here,
here.
exactly.
We did try.
Yeah.
So, any questions?
Just a super quick one, delta between 530 design and the 600K ask at town meeting. What's the,
It should be 530. That was
Okay.
the last updated number from Corel on design costs.
Got it.
So that was from his professional estimator.
gracias.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
Go and shake that
Thanks, Jake.
money tree. We'll go and shake that money tree for the DLS. collection.
Yeah. All right, what
Swear
tab
to
is
tell the
this?
whole truth, nothing but
Bonnie,
the
next-
truth,
next year
so
we
help
need
me,
tabs
Bonnie.
on these.
Help you, Bonnie, huh?
What tab is this, Bonnie?
Say that real loud, so help me,
So help
Bonnie.
me, Bonnie. yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Well, we gave you as much help as we possibly could, Mark.
You're right.
All those hedge funds.
The LCTV town meeting, as we affectionately call it. Mr. Carr?
All the advertising revenue he's
How are you
getting.
today? Thank you.
Introduce yourself to the television audience.
Oh, yes, I'm Mark Crory, Executive Director for Littleton Community Television. And so, the first thing I always like to say is that our budget is fully offset by way of transfer of all the local access cable fees received from Comcast, Verizon, and also through our intermunicipal agreement with Boxborough. So that's always a good starting point. Doesn't cost the taxpayers anything.
Oh, it does.
Well,
We get charged through the Comcast, we get charged through Verizon, so it does.
if you're a cable subscriber, that is correct, Jim. Thank you for pointing that out.
You're not, you did a free ride.
That's right.
Yeah, you just don't
That is
see it,
right.
just like the transfer station.
So, basically, when we started in 2011 as a town department, we set our budget and we set some numbers in there, and we knew that it was going to be a process to determine exactly where those numbers would fall each year. We've been experimenting with putting money here and there in different line items, and so each year has been a kind of a learning experience. This year, our staffing budget is increasing by $3,923, and that's due to steps and lanes, and that's from the amended 2016 budget, which included adding a second full-time person, Kirby Dolak. He was a part-time person. And part of his salary and his hours are dedicated to the town of Boxborough, which we took on running their cable operations.
And how is that going at this point? I mean, how's it?
It's going fine. They don't have a lot of expectations from us right now. They're content with selectmen meetings right now. But we proposed expanding and using Littleton as a model that, if you build it, they will come. So they're going to redo their, what they call the Grange Hall, which is where they have all their meetings. And we've been helping to put together some equipment ideas to furnish that room, much like we have the robotics in several locations, including this one. And so we're looking at that, they're looking at that. They're definitely going to be redoing the room, so we're getting in on the early stages so that the wiring will all be in place and ready to go. But we're hoping that eventually they will want to expand, and we would like to help them to do that.
The intermunicipal agreement between the two towns, and the dollar figure that we came up with is based on an estimate of what it costs us to provide the service for what they want right now, which
Right.
is selectmen's meetings and town meetings. If they wanted to, as a normal course of service, have more than that, then we could, agree on what a higher number is, because we then have to, staff for that. But where they do where they do run over, there's a per hour cost in addition that we can put on for extra services.
So they get an allotment from Verizon and Comcast, but that's not all going to you. You just still charge them, so they were accumulating others, so they have money for capital and some of these other build-outs that you're talking about?
Correct.
They
We,
spend their own PEG funds on their
Okay.
own capital stuff, but they send us, they use their PEG funds to pay for the services that they procure from LCTV.
I have a quick question for you, Mark. On the management summary page, first page, you've got hours of programming televised projected for 12,000 in fiscal year 17. Forgive me for my ignorance here, but I'm not familiar with the EDUC channel. What is that?
That's the educational channel, which we, at the special town meeting, some of the funds that were voted for our capital expenses were to launch that. We have a placeholder right now, it's just a bulletin board, but we plan on, we've started a cooperation with the school department where every day they bus kids over to my studio. We teach a class there from 11 to 12. And then on every Friday since October, the first week in October, we put on a newscast. So I don't know if you've seen it, the Tiger News Network, but you can check it on demand. It's pretty, I think it's a pretty good news show. So anyway, the educational channel is where that program is going to show up, as well as sporting events. We'll probably shift the school committee meeting on to that channel, and any other kind of educational-related programming would go on that channel.
But eventually, will it continue to be an on-demand, or will it have its own, channel 10, 9, 10, 11, 8, 9,
It will be
10?
its own channel on
Okay.
cable,
Yeah.
plus the on-demand.
Plus an on-demand, okay.
Yeah, we have 3 channels in Littleton, the public, the educational, and the government. And we've been using the P and the G
Right.
quite extensively, and now we're going to be utilizing the E.
Got it.
Great.
Cool, thank you.
So do these hours include Boxborough programming as well?
No, these are just, the additional projected hours are because of the educational channel. We anticipate that not only with the news show and other programming, but once the teachers find out that there's a vehicle that they could have their classroom videos shown and school plays and other things, we anticipate a lot more use for the schools. And then our expense budget has gone up by $5,575. Again, that's a combination of a growing process, and also we have included the Boxborough expenses in our expense items.
And the FY16 Foxborough income is, on the revolving, is 64, going down to 55, and then leveling at 55. What's that?
Yeah, the first year was a 14-month agreement,
Okay,
because we signed a little earlier prior to
Okay.
July 1st.
great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that all comes in FY16?
They bill us on a quarterly basis,
Some of it came in at 15.
but we bill them actually.
Services were provided.
Oh, the services were provided, but the revenue didn't come in until 16. That's why the book.
15. Yeah, because they wanted us to be, they liked the idea so much, they wanted to be able to have their town meeting done, their annual town meeting in May, the 15 done. So
That's
we
fine.
started
Okay.
early.
Oh, great, thank you, I understand, thank you.
Yep. If you turn to the, I don't know what page it is unused, but the breakout of our expenses, I think the most important thing to kind of highlight is under LCTV professional and technical services, where you see that number has jumped quite a bit over the last few years. To this year, we've budgeted $13,094. in order to cover all the government meetings that we cover, and we cover on average 14 meetings a month, which if you look around at different towns in this area at their government channels, I don't think anyone is covering as many meetings as we do. And we do that for two reasons. One, it's one of the selectmen's goals is to have the meetings televised and have as much communication and public knowledge as possible. And second, it's good for to get, viewers, eyes to the channel, The government program we found is, I don't know if it's more popular, but it's as popular as the public programming, so. And I think that the fact that we had a 40-minute special town meeting, I like to think, is because people are so well-informed that it's just business as usual when you get to town meeting floor, And it's all due to LCTV, and I think Jim Carr would back me up on that.
I'm right, I got your back on that one. Yeah. That was a beautiful thing.
Thank you. So, we, obviously, with two people, we can't cover all those meetings, so we hire contractors, and this is my time to pitch for anyone out there who is watching and has an interest in television production or an interest in town government. We pay $50 per meeting, whether it's a half-an-hour meeting or like a FENCom meeting, or a 4-hour marathon like the school committee. You still get $50. But it's good experience for anyone interested, and you get to use kind of state-of-the-art equipment. If you're a high school kid, or if you're 18 or over, or college, whatever, it's good experience if you're looking to do that as a career. So anyway, we projected for this year adding an additional meeting. One of the goals, I think, for LCTV as well as Keith Bergman and the selectmen was to make sure that at least all the regulatory boards are covered. And the only holdout we have right now is the Conservation Commission. So we budgeted.
I mentioned it to them this Monday night. I felt bad because they had just granted me something that I asked for, which was money to fund the Cooper Farm appraisal. But I did ask them to consider having their programs televised. They are the only regulatory board that does not, and I'll be following that up with them.
And we have enough facilities that the rooms are available.
Right, they meet in room 307.
307,
Okay,
and it is
and that's
one of the
okay.
ones
All
that
right.
is cable ready.
Just another little note on the bottom of that page, you'll see the 14,000 for, that's something we're putting aside because we anticipate that if the police station gets built, we'd like to have another room outfitted there with robotic.
Thank you, Bill.
I'm sorry, the fire department. The fire department.
I like the planning ahead on that, that's good.
Yeah. So, that's about it.
The position this Kirby guy has, can't be eliminated?
Are you a producer? Are you a producer?
Your name just got changed on the monitor, Bud.
Put the wide-angle lens on there.
Focus, where to focus the
We
camera.
suddenly went black.
Are there any other questions for me? No?
Anybody? Good, thank you
Good,
very much.
great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
All right, what tab are we going to now, Bonnie?
Nine.
Everybody's already done. Yep.
You get 5 minutes, Chief.
You want me to catch you up? I'll catch you up if you want.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of eliminating, so this is
What do you say?
You're top.
What'd you say?
Use coffee.
That's what I said the same.
You're on the gauntlet going home, I guess.
Introduce yourself to the public.
You know that term, do you?
Chief Matthew King. Good morning.
Good morning, Chief.
So I can catch you up if you want.
Don't wait for me. Go, listening.
Okay. The department obviously is, like the town, we're going through growing pains, growing issues with the point across the street, 15 Great Road coming onto full occupancy. They are still building some houses. We, the department as a whole, we got our 17th officer a year ago, roughly a year and a half ago, and that actually is our 2002 level, where we were before the layoffs after that. So we haven't grown any officers really since 2002. So I guess while we go along and go through it, why don't we, the best bet will be to talk our way through the whole thing. So just goes down. That way.
Thank you.
It's gonna make it easier. Trust me.
Thank you.
Okay, I can do that. Keep talking.
Okay. So on this sheet, this first sheet here first, and the other one side by side with it. The first sheet I gave you just because FinCom members, I know it was discussed at a FinCom meeting, and Selectman DeCoste and actually Selectman Avella approached me on this. This is, last year, every year the town report comes out with officer salaries in it. We just wanted to show what the real deltas were, like, I'll just pick on one officer, for instance, because it was, there was some discussion about some of the officers making over $100,000 last year. Well, I'll pick on Detective Crory, it's public knowledge. His base salary is actually $51,000. He ended up making last year $111,000. But to do that, he worked 1,382 extra hours in time last year. So, so he's working an average of 26 hours extra a week. So I just wanted people to realize that their base salaries aren't $111,000. To make that extra money, it's work. Now, some of that's a mix of overtime. In Detective Crory's case, it was 1,062 extra hours of details and 319 hours of overtime. So I just wanted to just go over that real quick, just for a point of knowledge.
Excuse me, Chief.
Sure.
At what point do you or the deputy chief begin to get nervous that these guys are working too many hours?
By policy and by their contract, they can only work, they can work 2 doubles, they can work 2 16-hour days, and then they have to have a minimum of 16 hours off at that point. So,
basically a 1,300 or 1,400 hour.
It's a half-time job. It's another 20-plus hours a week.
Half-time job.
Right. So you have to watch them. And obviously we monitor it, and some do it on their weekends off, some do it on their days off, some do it flare it up to the shift. But obviously it's it is a concern we watch for.
Okay.
So
good.
Basically.
The details I'm sorry, but the details, that all volunteer work, basically? I mean, they sign up to do it, they're not required to do it?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct, on the details especially. They can get ordered in for details, I should qualify that, because we have to let, them open up the roads and give them their protection, so if, there are order-ins involved. So my basic budget is everything that's required by contract. I mean, everything in the level budget is required under, is what's required by either a union contract, a management contract, or the town personnel contract. And that's the $1,446,322 budget for police, and the $279,796,65 for the dispatchers. That's basically, that keeps us right at the levels we are now, which is 17 officers and the 5 dispatchers, which gives us our minimum coverage right now. So basically, that's just everything that's there. It's everything that, to me, that there's no real padding or anything in the budget. There's nothing there. Our overtime expenditure for the last 3 years has been right on the numbers, and obviously I would like to see that reduced to some measure. Our expense budget has not increased at all. It's staying the same with the, go over a little bit in the capital plan, but with the way that the Finance Committee and the Selectmen have let me replace cruisers, it's kept our cruiser maintenance budget under control. So that actually, for the first, especially this year, we're really reaping the benefits of that expenditure.
So I guess, so does anyone have any questions on just the level staffing budget? I mean, it kind of is what it is. It's just everything that's required by contract. So if we hit on that package again that I gave you, can we go to the last page in that budget? This is the mission budget that I am requesting. It's a 19 officer budget. It's adding two officers, and this sheet will be also discussed on this. So basically, for us, for a base salary for an officer, it's $47,555. My fringe is higher than 34%. I was just told by Bonnie that I was probably running a little high. I had actually fringe listed at $22,847 for a cost per officer of $70,403. So
Excuse me. and
Sure.
Why is that?
those were the numbers I got from Steve and from
Bonnie?
That's a family plan budgeted in there for insurance, and there's an average of,
Oh, okay.
some
So
individual
it's
plans.
just
So
the
that
go-
brings it
just
down
the
to
demographic.
family
I guess I'd rather tell you the high side than the low side.
No,
in the
that's
end,
fine. That's
and
fine.
have the numbers right.
Like that.
No, that's
So,
fine.
in the 19 officer budget, basically what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a $69,000 increase to the police budget and a roughly a $45,600 budget increase on the town's fringes. What I did is we decreased overtime out of about $18,000. Plus, you'll see in there's also a reserve officer listed. Currently, we train our reserves, and they only get time on the road when they get to fill in, which is only on occasion. I'm proposing that I also took money out of overtime and put a direct line item for them to have 2 shifts a week that strictly a reserve officer will be working on the road. So I guess at the end, there's no cost. The reserve officer budget basically is my level funded budget, because I'll take $18,000 out of overtime no matter what and put it to there to get those 2 extra hours. Then there's a further cut in overtime with the 2 extra officers, which gives us, that's why the total increase is around $115,000 total for the town for the 2 officers. Part of the reasoning for this is, well, there's several, but with 15 Great Road and the Point coming online, and I guess the only way I can describe the Point to you was when I sat down with Sam Park, and I also sat down with Chief Tom McEnany from Westford. The Point, if you look at Westford's 110 section, almost their entire 110 section of stores is being put there in tiers, if you look at it. If you think of what's going up there, and you look at Westford, pretty much almost all their stores tiered are going up there. And there's some things with larger draws up there. We're going from, right now we have chip shots in the pub on the Common and a service bar in the Yangtze River. There's going to be 7 liquor serving establishments in one way or another across the street there. So we're almost, we're going from 3 to 10 in the matter of next year and next spring. It does, being right off the highway, it's also, we've noticed an uptick in, like I said to you, different calls for service that we've never experienced before, a lot of scamming in the parking lot. This is already just with the lower tier being open, things that we've never seen before. I'm not saying it's on a daily basis, but it certainly has been on 2 or 3 times a month, things that, I was approached out of the parking lot at Market Basket coming out one night, and I said, okay, I can get someone to help you.
So explain more, because you told me the whole story, but explain to everybody what that really means when you talk about that.
Well, a person walked up to me, had a baby in his arms, asking me for money or write me a check, and this is just one of the things, and there was a whole group of them, and they were floating the entire parking lot. There was 5 or 6 of them, and their records when the officers came down and checked them out, and it's one of those fine balances. There are some good people out there who need money, and there are some bad people out there that don't. This group was basically a group of gypsies, but talking to my fellow chiefs that are up and down the highway, the closer the stores and things are to the highway, easy on, easy off. The advantage we have, of course, is one driveway, we're in and out, and And a lot of times when there's a call across the street, myself or the deputy is out the door, because, we can get over there fairly quick, but, so things are changing. 15 Gray Road is changing. There are, again, when you put people on top of each other, it's just, people can hear what's going on, they call more. Family disturbances, things of that nature. And something else that I don't know if a lot of people realize, when we make an arrest, and typically right now, on the day shift, on the evening shift, we try to run 3 cars. On the late nights, there's 2 cars. Typically because of, and right now, for the last 2 years, we've almost run at least 2 people short for almost the last 2 years, just because of either people leaving or people being sick. Right now, we're actually running 3 short. I have 1 in the academy, I have 1 out with an injury, and I have 1 that's on maternity leave. So, we're really stressed over there. We're averaging right now 11 order-ins a month, which is not good for the personnel either. So, with that being said, when we make an arrest, it requires 2 people to process that arrest. That's by the industry standard, it's our standard. It takes about 2 hours to 2.5 hours to process an arrest. So when I bring 2 officers off the road for 2.5 hours, if you look at it, that's 5 hours of time. We average probably between 200 and 300 arrests a year, depending on what our staffing level runs at. That's 1,000 hours right there. It's almost half a year's time where that one person's gone off the road. And that's just for arrests. Domestics, the same kind of problem. It's 45 minutes tied up at the scene, another hour to hour and a half of paperwork. So all of a sudden you start looking at things. If you have 2 cars on the road on a 3 to 11, there's an arrest. There's 2.5 hour period where there's no cars in Littleton at all floating at that point. So that's, just part of our reasoning for the 19 officer budget. A little bit of demographics, just real quick. Counts on the roads just leaving in and in town. I pulled these off the Mass DOT sites. You don't have these, I'll pass this out to you. This is just, on 495 alone, there's 150,000 cars a day. On 119, there's 17,000 cars a day. Route 2A, there's over 15.2. That's in our common. At Route 2 at the Acton line is 15,600 cars. Route 119 by Willow Road is 13.8. King Street at the Westford line, 10,000. We get approximately 11,000 cars a day off our ramps into our town. So our transient traffic through town is extremely high. Again, this is just some pictures of behind it are showing 147 King Street, which is always a point of call volume. The point itself, some of the demographics on the personnel, and then the photos of 15 Great Road. So really what I'm asking of the town is to make an investment in the police department of $115,000 to get us 2 officers. The reserves are basically, in the level funded budget. So really what I'm looking for is a 115 investment that gets me 2 officers. The schedule, we're investing all the personnel gains here in patrol. The detectives will stay exactly the way they are. 1 sergeant of detectives, the detective SRO, Mike Rory, will continue on in the schools, and just the deputy and myself. On the patrol side, basically what would happen is, at that point, if the board was agreeable to it, and once we discuss it, I would be asking to go down to 3 sergeants and promote a lieutenant over in the patrol side, be a working lieutenant who would probably work something like 1 to 9 at night. The sergeants at that point would be, 2 of the sergeants would be working 6 to 2 shifts, which would be the overlap into the late night hour. We have 1 o'clock licenses, gets us an hour overlap. They had to stay, they can stay. The reserve officers basically are gonna be floating shifts. Obviously, we'll work a lot of Friday and Saturday night, late nights, or overlapping shifts. And what it does allow us to do with overtime, and the one commitment I think everyone here knows me well enough, is I'm estimating and I'm guesstimating on overtime. I brought it down to 138 for the 19 officer budget, from the 183, which would be the level staffing budget. The one commitment I'll make to you is, I'm not gonna spend overtime just to spend overtime, and I think you have done it in the past. In fiscal year 18 budget, if I see overtime, that I had, I'm not gonna say a lot, but if I have extra overtime, I obviously don't go in there and overpad it. I'll figure it, it will lessen the impact of what my budget impact would be. But I don't know at this point. It certainly should allow a lot more freedom to at least go down 2 cars and still maintain 3 cars on the 3 to 11 shift in the early, late nights. Day shift, typically with the 3 cars, obviously, there's the detective around and the SRO, the chief, and the deputy chief. So we tend to, we can get out and lend a hand a little bit easier. 3 to 11 shift till, 7 in the morning is pretty much, the assigned personnel that are here. And that's why, that's the concentration is really going to be from probably 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 2 o'clock in the morning of getting the extra personnel spread out over that time period. We're a growing community, and, there are times when I do go home on Friday and Saturday nights, and I'm not, real happy with running 2 cars, to be honest with you, and, some safety things, pop up every now and again. We haven't had any tragedies. I don't want to have any tragedies. I'm not going to say, the tragedies happen no matter if there's 30 people out there, but better coverage for the community, better coverage for what's being built, and I guess I'm asking for that $115,000 investment.
Chief, you're asking for 115, but isn't the net actually like 96 because of all the, what we get back as far as overtime and that kind of thing? Doesn't the net come down to 96?
Yeah, it's a little closer to that, because also too, I figured it is actually about probably $10,000 high in the fringe, so it does shoot down to probably, when it really figures out, it's close to, in the 96 range, yeah. Again, I would rather tell you a high number than a low number.
Appreciate that.
I have a question, Chief, on how you work a night shift. You said if there's an arrest, usually 2 officers are taken off. We run into two cars, and something else happens. What?
Typically what happens then is the prisoner gets stuck in a cell real quick, the area of town gets called, and one of the officers will get in his car from here and respond from here. And typically we'll get back up from an outside agency on, whether it be the state police or whether it be, our border towns, which is no different from them other than Westford, who's obviously, they're much larger than we are. They're running, 5 and 6 cars on a shift. But, same with Acton. But everyone else on our other borders is running, similar to a little bit heavier than we are, so.
So is this covered with sort of a mutual aid agreement?
Yep, it's a state.
Or is there a fee for
No, it's a
Westford to come in versus
statewide mutual aid agreement, if they call us, we go, similar to fire. And, same thing, we just have to make a radio call, and that gives them police powers in our community. If you remember, the board also signed the Middlesex County Compact, which gives all police officers in Middlesex County police powers in any Middlesex County, town, as long as they're working and on duty in uniform. The only ones that have police powers all the time are the chiefs.
Good.
And your capital? It looks like it's pretty standard,
Capital's
except for
pretty
the plow
standard, right.
truck, you got it.
Capital is the 2 cruiser replacements, the public safety radio maintenance, that's the yearly, that's the protection plan for the roughly $2 million in infrastructure. The tires is what we've done over the years have. The plow truck, we have a 2002 plow truck that was a hand-me-down from the highway department that we utilize for deploying our safety gear, deploying the radar trailers and other equipment, and also keeping up on the parking lot, much like the fire department does. We had it in for service this year. The rear frame is completely shot in it. It's unrepairable. We'll probably get through this year on it. Jimmy, I talked to Jimmy, he has nothing coming off the line for, that would be appropriate for us for at least a couple of years at this point. So we're, it's in a typical year, we buy 3 vehicles. You'll notice that we don't actually see 3 cars again roughly until fiscal 19, and that's probably going to get pushed back a year because the administrative vehicles, where they're bought brand new now for the admin, the mileage going on them is, is minimal. The detectives have brand-new cars, and, then, you know, and they're, you know, they're putting on probably, you know, 10 or 11,000 miles a year as compared to, you know, 35 to 40,000 miles a car on a line car. So the truck's important for us. It does, typically what happens is, you know, if I'm around, the deputy or the detectives, whoever, we keep our lot clean. It's a much bigger lot than it used to be. You know, it's tough for Jimmy to keep up on it, you know. Last year was an anomaly, but years past. So, you know, it not only serves that purpose, but like I said, it's for our emergency equipment, our sawhorses, all our cones, if you have a large, large scene you have to set up. And it's also utilized for places that we wouldn't necessarily, there are still places in town that we don't like to try and take the cruisers into, even though, you know, they're the new SUVs, something that's higher, they can get down some of these back dirt roads and, or on the sides of the railroad tracks, things of that nature.
The brush truck that the fire chief was talking about earlier is going to be potentially coming offline, and he's looking at selling that at auction. There's some places up in Maine, he said, that are interested. I have no idea the condition of it. Is that something we can investigate?
Yeah, I'll certainly look at it and ask them. I don't even know what they have for brush truck. I don't know what it is. But I certainly can look at it.
It's a pickup truck.
Yeah,
But
it's like an
cage
F-450
and
or
something.
something.
F-350.
Tandem.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have a body on it or anything, because it has the fire brush body on it, so that would come off, and then it would probably, if we were looking at it, it would just be a cabin chassis. We'd have to invest in putting a body and stuff like that.
I'll certainly look at it and come back to you with a thing. So, you know, again, our capital's pretty standard. Typically what I try and do, and again, I've always tried to do in the past, any you know, grants or any reserves I get in, I try and keep capital project, you know, capital things away from you, you know, the smaller stuff, so I don't have to come back to you if I don't have to. And that's what we've done, you know, the board has, you know, approved the expenditures, you know, if it's over the limits, and I try to, it keeps me away from coming back to you guys begging for money, and it's worked well in the past, so. And I try and keep our capital down to the bare minimum of what we need. You know, our cars are the most, obviously, that's number one always. You know, that's where the rubber meets the road with the patrolman in it, so.
Literally where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly.
Huh?
So,
And I would just say, in terms of the grants and so on, make sure you keep us informed as you get those, because that's good information for us to have to
Oh, yeah.
include that in.
You know, right now, again, the K-9 program has been up and running for, has not cost the town, taxpayers, any money at this point. I did get another $14,000 grant just recently for that, for equipment, which will, one of these cruisers, I'm hoping, will drop off by January 1st, because I believe between what the K-9 Foundation is doing and the other grants I've received, we'll be purchasing another cruiser for the town that will cost the town, you know, minimal money, if anything.
Fine, how do we reflect that in these? It would be good to see that as part of the overall budgets or planning or something, if we're getting things like that. Somehow that we did get another cruiser in there, wasn't part of the budget, but it's there just so we can see it. I don't know how we do that.
We do identify those types of things in the capital plan, we just identify it as being paid by another source.
Because what would happen here is, if this happens, one of these cars, I would be withdrawing one of the cars' requests and having that capital number.
So it'd still be there, the dollar would
Right,
be
but it
zero
just-
or some
right,
indication.
the-
All right.
The dollar source wouldn't be from capital or the auction. We just did hold the major auction too, and got rid of 7 cars or something like that.
I guess usually when we're looking at things, we're looking forward, so if it happened we never see that, but somehow it would be good to have visibility.
Right, a lot of
to
things,
give everybody
unfortunately, a lot of things don't happen in line with the budget. They happen.
No, I understand.
They happen after.
But I think it's important for the
budget's
town people
closed.
to understand too, that how much it goes on to keep the costs as reasonable and so on as you can, so.
Well, I think that, you know, the board especially, and Keith and Bonnie have, you know, they encourage us to be as innovative as possible, I guess, and the more you can look for and find, you do it.
Absolutely. Just want to advertise it when you get it. So, okay, anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The other
Agreed.
thing we're doing, it was one of the selectmen's goals, and we are receiving state financial assistance through our community compact with the Baker Polito administration. But we will be getting $15,000 to help the police and fire departments develop strategic plans, which can then be used as a building block for the master plan update. That's another thing that they're working on.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your
Thanks,
support,
Chief.
and I appreciate it, as always.
17.
Listen to close, have a good day. And I'm gonna... That right over.
No, no.
Sorry, we're late.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you.
So, Sam Alvarez, Library Director.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so this year, or for next year, in the level budget, we're asking for an increase of about 1.93% in staff level. That's really just for standard step increases. The biggest difference you'll see is, as far as expenses go, is I split up what we get from library office supplies. I've asked for an additional line and put in for just other supplies, which would cover things like the book covers that we put on the books, the barcodes. Right now, we just have library office supplies covering all that, and we're already at 96% spent on that area of the budget. It's a niche market, and there's really only 2 vendors that sell anything, and they're very expensive, and they're all things that we need. So I asked for that extra line just to help cover those extra
So
expenses.
this is the other supplies on here?
Other supplies,
1,500?
right. That's a new this year. Also, as far as books go, I've asked for a slight increase over what we normally would have asked, only because the library needs to be certified by the state, and in order to be certified, one of the key elements of that is that we have to spend about 19% of our total municipal income. So, just to give you an idea, last year, that came out to $97,000 that we had to spend on books. We got about $63,000 from the town, so that was between $30,000 and $40,000 that we had to supplement with donations, state aid, the trustees kicked in some. So that's about $30,000 to $40,000 that we have to sort of figure out how we're going to get just to get certified every year. And so
Is it about the same number this year?
this year it would be $100,000. It increases by 2% each year.
So Sam,
So you're gonna,
it's more than just books that you can purchase though.
Right, it's books, databases, DVDs, CDs, pretty much anything that a person can check out or look at in the library. It doesn't cover things like furniture and all that sort of stuff, but yeah, basically things that can circulate or you can look at on our website, that's what we can spend the money on. So that's level. As far as mission budget goes, I'm asking for an increase of 7.15% or $30,000, and that would increase the hours for the children's librarian by about 4 hours per week, and 2 of my library techs about 3 hours each, to do more. Really, the focus would be children's and teen programming. We want to get more teens in the library, more kids in the library. Our friends group bought us some laptops. We're going to use those laptops to do a Girls Who Code program, which is basically getting girls interested in coding and science and math and technology.
Yes, that's wonderful.
You got 2 votes here.
So really the hours would go towards covering programs like
You
that.
could have 3, I mean,
Okay.
I would support something.
Okay, all right, very good.
Come on.
Jim likes girls, I mean,
You know, I'm very supportive.
Yeah, that's at least 3 votes, right?
there you go.
So it would basically go towards more children's and teens programming, just to give more programs for the kids to have something to do and get them interested in the library.
Does that mean more hours for the library, or just more programs within the operating hours that you have now?
Just within the operating hours that, yeah. And then, yeah, really, that's it as far as mission. That was really what we were asking for. As far as the capital plan goes, we're asking for $5,000 to cover things like the replacement of new furniture. Just for instance, my head of Sarah, her desk broke this year, and we didn't have any money in the capital budget to replace it. So Bill came over and did his magic and kind of patched it up a little bit, but, you know.
For the 2x4s.
Right. So, yeah, that would just help to cover new furniture in the library, that sort of thing. So that was it for the budget. I also wanted to discuss with the Board of Selectmen the library project that's coming up, if that's okay. So The library project, where we're at with that is, so my predecessor, Kip, he was able to obtain a planning design grant for the library. And the planning design grant basically is the step you have to take before you can apply for the construction grant. The planning design grant, so far, we've hired a library consultant. He's done a feasibility study. He's determined that we could use more space. Like I said, we have an increase of 2% every year. So we need more space, more programming space. Everybody who comes into the library thinks it was built as a school and it looks like a school. So, just to make a library that looks actually like a library would be helpful. So to that end, we've been working on, we've hired an architect, and he's creating schematic designs at the moment. And basically, we're looking to apply for the actual construction grant in January of 2017. So that would, the construction grant would cover up to 50%. We wouldn't find out if we received the grant until July of 2017. There are about 30 libraries applying for the grant at the moment. Everybody gets something, but it's basically based on need. So you get put on a waiting list, and that sort of determines when you get it. So I might get word that I get the grant in July of 2017, or I might hear that I get it in like 2020. So we're really not sure when we're going to get it, but for MBLC and the state's requirements, we'll have to we'll have to receive at town meeting, get up to the 50% of the funding, or whatever it turns out to be. We'll have to start looking into that as soon as we
Once you're awarded, say you get a grant for 30% or some grant, once you're awarded a grant, how soon do you have to?
6 months.
6 months to do what?
To attain the remaining, so if you
Obtain the rest of the money from the town or other sources?
Right.
Okay.
So the trustees are already looking into fundraising, but we'll also need the town support on that, so.
Sam, can you talk to the scope of work for the designer? In other words, tell us about the renovation versus the new.
Sure. So right now, we're looking at two different options, either renovating and expanding our current space or building a whole new library somewhere else. Right now, we're looking at the Morgan property as a possibility. If that's, I don't know if that's going to be an issue.
Look at it.
Well, I think, from our standpoint, Sam, it's good, we've heard that, the trustees have been moving forward, but updates would be nice. I mean, to come to a budget meeting and say, oh, by the way, we're putting $9 million on the table for fiscal year 18, that's kind of a big... So I would suggest to you and the trustees to get a better flow of communication to both finance, Board of Selectmen, so we can all grab onto this, because this is really the first exposure we've had to it.
Yeah, not to make excuses, but when I started, we were 8 or 9 months behind.
Okay.
So I've been playing catch-up up until now, and now we finally have really caught up. We really don't know how much it's going to be. We don't know, like, a lot of our issue is that we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if we're going to get the grant in July of 2017 or later on. And it's not going to be $9 million. It's probably going to be closer to 4 that we get. Just to give you an example, the Athol Library, they spent about $8.6 million to build their library, and MBLC gave them $4.5 million. So it's probably going to be around.
And one other suggestion I'll make, I mean, PMBC's got a lot of talent on it. And, you're going to start thinking about site plan, what you're going to do, what that site plan looks like, to make presentations to not only the Board of Selectmen, but the town itself. So,
Actually, PMBC has been very involved.
Okay, good.
So we've got 2 representatives on their committee.
Yep.
And to Sam's defense, he did come to talk to us, to FinCom, and made a presentation.
Right.
So there has been some communication.
Okay.
Obviously not to the selectmen.
So, again, I think for the board, we'd love to sit down, let's hear about it, bring everybody into the loop.
Just one quick thing. One of the things when you come back to the board is like, I'd like to know what the square footage is, what you currently have, and what you're proposing, and why it needs to be what a different size.
Okay, so I've created a building program, which I can send you the link to it, and that has all of that information on it. Right now, the current building size is about 19,000 square feet, and we're looking to increase it to 22,000 and change.
One of the key critical first steps is to determine the floor loading capacity of the current library and determine if it really has the capacity to sustain the floor loads of a library.
Oops. I wouldn't even have thought of that.
Right.
Use the first floor.
Buy lighter books.
Yeah, you get these stacks of
called
books
the
and
interweb.
Yeah.
they're heavy.
Super light.
We have time on the December 14th agenda for the selection.
Okay, good.
So that would be great.
I could have our OPM and architect.
I think that'd be helpful.
Commissioners,
And-
too.
And staff has expressed a willingness to work with the library trustees if they want to explore other sites. There's not a lot of choices out there, but we can, help them to look at what might be potential sites.
Just a general update, guys.
If we did move to another town-owned site, what would be the process of?
We can, let's talk about it first, and then we'll get some other data for you.
Okay.
We need to ask those type of questions at one of our meetings, and we can task those.
Okay, great.
What was that date, Keith? The 14th?
Yeah, December 14th.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the schools. Mr. Fontanella, what tab number, Bob?
We are actually on 11.
Schools is...
11.
11 for 11.
Just for the record, it's not 11.
Oh, I get it.
I love it in mine. It's pretty
Small here.
Introduce yourself.
Mike Fontella, Chairman of the School Committee. How's everybody doing today?
Very good. How you doing?
Good. I have a short presentation that we gave out at school committee on Thursday night, which is what we're calling the initial budget analysis. It shows where we expect to see increases in the budget, so I'd like to go over that to start. Yeah, it's up on the screen up there. So the first slide shows the various line items where we expect to see increases. The first is salary increases to retain our current staffing level of $538,000. The second is a SPED consulting for our in-district staff, OTs, PTs, ABAs of around $75,000. And then what I'm going to do after this is, behind it, I have more detail on why these particular items are going up. So we'll go through that after we get through the list. Third item is SPED out-of-district placements, an increase of around $250,000. Case transportation, increase of $25,000. We're looking for additional staff at Russell Street, about $60,000. Also additional staff at at least one of our other buildings, we're not sure which one yet, so it's not cited, $60,000. Materials and resources for $100,000. Cost of living adjustment for our non-contractual staff of $20,000. We're going to adjust the substitutes line by $100,000 and professional development by $20,000, which is a total of $1,248,000. If we go to the next slide, we can start talking a little bit about each one. Right, salary increases to retain the curving staff level. It's our steps and lanes. At the moment, this does not currently include any adjustments for staff replacement due to retirements or other staff leaving the district for other reasons. We typically, at this time of the year, if we thought we were going to have retirements, we would have had a couple of teachers already approach us and to pull the papers to start that process. Nobody has yet, but that doesn't mean they won't. But we usually have some by now, and then we get maybe one or two more as the year goes on. Right now, we don't have any expected retirements that we've heard of. So this line item could move a little bit as we react to that type of information, but at the moment, that's, for our current staff, that's where we would stay. Next, we would have looking at,
Sped Consulting, OTs, PTs, ABAs. What we're trying to do here is, we've done this over the past several years, is continue to provide services in district. So while this is going up $75,000, if we have to provide these services out of district, it'll go up more. We also think that we know that it has a much more positive impact on the students if we can do it in district versus out of district. But we have kids that need more services, these types of services, so one way or the other, we need to increase the amount we're spending on these services.
So this says consulting, but these are actually
Yeah,
or services
yeah,
for
it's,
kids.
exactly, right. It's consulting in the sense that it could be somebody that we hire as a consultant, but they would be in district, and it wouldn't be transporting the student out of district to go receive the services at a third-party venue. So it can be a little bit of both, but it's definitely in-district services is the difference versus the next slide, which is specifically our out-of-district placements, $250,000. This is not a firm number yet. We expect it to go up. It goes up every year. But we're still working with our vendors and working with the SPED director to identify if we need to provide more services or more children out of district. So this number could move as we get farther into the budget process, and it will move. We'll get it firmed up, but it will go up to some degree. The next is our case transportation, $25,000. I think we skipped one there. Sorry. I have this in order. Sorry, yeah, what's the next one? It should be case transportation, should be next at 25,000. That's all right, I can speak to it without it. Again, just, we expect that will go up slightly, so we have that in there for $25,000. The next is additional staff at Russell Street, $60,000. Right now, based on our enrollment and staffing, we feel like we need to add at least one staff member. If we don't, we're going to get up to 27 to 28 students per class. Right now, we're kind of pushing the comfort level at around 24 to 25 students per class. We have a fairly large second-grade class in Shaker Lane that's going to move up to Russell Street next year. So based on our analysis right now, if we don't increase the staff, and when we did decrease staff a few years ago, Russell Street bore the brunt of that, because at the time they could. But now we're reacting to the changing enrollments in that building, and we feel like we need to address that.
So again, just to be clear, this
Yep.
is a teacher.
It would be a
I think-
teacher,
I think
yes.
when you have these discussions,
Yeah.
it's very helpful to.
Yes, this would be a teacher, a classroom teacher that we would add to the staffing level at Russell
Excuse me,
Street.
Mike,
Yep.
does the 60,000 that you show there include fringes, or is the?
No, this would strictly be for our budget and again, $60,000 is the average. It would, it could be, yeah, it could be a little less, could be a little more, depending on, where we hire and things like that. But no, it does not
It
reflect
doesn't
the
include
fringe.
the 30+%.
Correct.
fringes. Okay.
Correct. This is because it's just on our budget.
Question for you.
Yep.
So second grade class that's moving up is
Mhm.
larger. What's the first and the kindergarten behind that look like?
They're not as large as that second grade class, but they're reasonably, that's a good, I'd have to quantify that and take a look at it. I saw it the other night, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Not as big, but not significantly smaller than, our ranges can be like 100, when we're in elementary school, it's always over 100, and then as they get towards the high school, we get some people that leave the district or move out or choose other options for schooling. But right now at Shaker Lane, I want to say it's like 120 in second grade and more like 115 to 110. So it's not, it's a little bit less, but it's not 30% less or 20% less. They're all right in there. So that.
The last time we chatted, the impact of the 40B was in the 30 or 35?
Yeah,
Has that
yeah,
changed?
and we're feeling some of that, but it hasn't been creating a panic situation where we simply can't deal with it on a day-to-day basis. So but it is a good point to make, is that if we can deal with this year and then next year and the year after exactly, then we should be okay, rather than trying to hold on and not increase it all, and then all of a sudden we're going to have to thump 3 or 4 people in place all at one time. So.
Mike, just to follow up.
Yep.
So going forward from second grade to third grade, fourth grade, what do those class sizes look like?
The current, like, third and fourth grade and stuff. Again, so the only anomaly right now is the current 8th grade, which will be going up to the high school next year. That's still around 130 kids. It was like 140 when they came to kindergarten. Yeah, that's big. I call them the 9/11 babies. So I have one, so I can tell you. That's what it
All
was.
right.
So the rest of the classes it's a good question. 6th, 7th grade are not reflective of the impact of the growth in Littleton, although we've added a couple of kids to each of those grades as the 40B came online, because I know some of them too. But the impact I think we're going to see is down more in the elementary
How many
schools.
students are we talking about, just so I can...
Yeah, in 6th and 7th grade, it would be more like, again, 110, 105, 110, 115, right around in that range. They're all over 100, but none of them are as big as that 8th grade class. That is the biggest class that we have in the district right now.
And so by adding 5 or 10 students, that really needs an extra teacher.
Yeah, it can. I mean, based on where we are right now, like it's tricky because in the elementary schools, it's easy to think about class sizes because they stay in the same room effectively. I mean, they move around a little bit, but effectively they're with the same teacher and in the same room every day. And, we're comfortable, 20 to 23 is okay. Less than that, we would take it if we could, but we don't need that. When we start getting into that 25, 26, 27 range, that's when we start to worry. At the middle school, 7th and 8th grade, and the high school, obviously it's a little different because kids are choosing which class to take, and if they're all taking a particular class, then we're just going to deal with the fact that there's 27 or 28 kids in there. And it's a different curriculum and a different way of teaching, and the kids, you're right, are more responsible for their own, getting through the curriculum. But at the same time, we do have contractual obligations, it's negotiated in our contract, that we can only have certain class size levels all the way up through the including the high school. And we sometimes have a debate with the LEA about how we're going to formulate and come out with that number, and we don't always agree, but it hasn't been a problem because we've been well below it enough that nobody's had to truly worry about it. And the next line item where we're talking about additional staff at other buildings, which is, again, we're looking at one staff, it's either going to be Shaker Lane or probably the high school. Because part of it is that we feel like we need to think about the enrollment, because some of that 8th grade class is moving up to the high school next year. That's going to have to get dealt with. But again, we know we're pushing the limit of what we're contractually allowed to do. I don't know off the top of my head. I have to look at it. I don't know. I haven't looked at it lately. So some of it is us just wanting to be able to, maintain a good classroom level that we think is going to be able to have the most impact on the kids and not put them at a disadvantage. Some of it is just we need to address possibly being out of alignment with the contract. So we're still looking
Overall,
at
my enrollment's been pretty stagnant.
Steady, yeah. And we've used school choice, so that's allowed us to stay consistent. That's why we're always at around that 105 by the time they graduate from high school. We're not under 100 really anymore. We don't think that we're going to be able to be as aggressive with school choice because we think the town is growing and there's no really, unless we got to a point where, we need to add, 10 kids have shown up and we need to add a staff, but that's going to put us down to 19 kids a classroom. Well, then maybe the right thing to do is to scale up again a little bit, because it does have an impact on the budget if we can increase the school choice number. And if we're going to add that teacher, we don't want to underutilize the capacity that we're adding. We would think about that.
How many choice kids do we have now, ballpark?
I want to say it's probably 80 across the district. It's a decent number. Yeah, it's a decent number. We fill all the slots. Whatever slots we open, get filled. We don't have any slots that we open that don't get filled. We have a good school system and a good town, and people are interested in participating.
Good.
All right, so moving on. We talked about the additional staff, the other buildings. Materials and resources. Go one more, yep. $100,000. We're looking for curriculum materials for science and ELA at the middle school and social studies at the elementary school. New curriculum programs. We piloted a few different programs at the science for the middle school, which was way behind the curriculum curve, and we picked the one we wanted to use, and now we actually have to acquire the materials. Same kind of thing for ELA in the elementary school. The one thing that we did talk about at school committee the other night when we saw this was, and you can see on the capital list, we also have we'll go over that later, we have a line item for school textbooks, resource materials, which was part of what we did last year. So the question is, and we can talk about this, is this the appropriate place to do this, or would it be better to do capital? Or is there some things that we feel need to be maintained in the operating budget because they're more recurring, but other things that we think are more qualified by what we define as capital? So we feel like we need $100,000 worth of resources for these particular programs. We've put it here for now, but we can certainly think about what the right way to fund it is.
What would you think the useful life of a program is?
Again, see, so that's interesting, right? Because the science materials are e-books and online materials, which is a lot different than historically what we would be thinking about, where we would say, oh, we got to go buy, 75 textbooks. We're not talking about buying 75 textbooks. So the nice thing about that is that the usage is really lifetime, although it will evolve, and you're probably going to have, as they evolve the materials, you're going to have to pay, they're not going to give them to you and have a lifetime of, every time we upgrade, you get to keep it. Yeah. So there'll be, but that initial outlay is there, but it should last. I'm not sure that I don't think that the ELA materials and the social studies materials are quite as electronically focused as that particular curriculum for the sciences. Science lends itself to that because you can, with, different technologies, you can recreate, science experiments, and show them or do them online and see the effect of it. You don't actually have to mix the chemicals, or if you're going to do a dissection, those can be done electronically now, and you get the same idea, but you don't actually have to have the little pig sitting there, or whatever it is.
Frog, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So science, it's a pretty interesting evolution in how to present that type of curriculum. ELA in social studies, there are plenty of terrific opportunities to use online learning, but at the same time, you're going to have textbooks and materials. $20,000 we're looking at for a cost of living adjustment for our non-contractual staff. There's a couple things. One thing we talk about here in the presentation is, we are under market rate for our in-house custodial staff, and they do a great job. We really like having the continuity there. They've been there year by year, and we don't want to see them leave because they just can get more money at another district, which we have seen with a couple of recent hires that were only with us for a short time because they said, oh, I can go get a job, down the road. But the other thing that's not cited in here that I was told by the business manager is there is a mandated increase in the minimum wage coming. Is it federal or state?
I believe it's federal.
Yeah, federal. And some of our cafeteria workers are currently above the current minimum wage, but when the minimum wage goes up, they're not going to be above it anymore, so we're going to have to catch them up.
I thought the state minimum wage was already higher than the federal.
Well, and the state minimum wage, believe it or not, does not apply to municipalities, so. But
the federal will.
Federal does.
Jeez. Prevailing wage for other work that gets done, but.
We discussed it at the personnel board and sort of as a policy level, that as a policy matter, the town side is going to look at the state minimum wage as a.
Yeah, we talked about that too. We would be curious to know what
the fact that we're legally not
town is.
obligated to enforce it doesn't mean that we're not.
Shouldn't do it.
Exactly, and we want to know what the point of view is on that, because we certainly want to conform to that if we could.
And now, were these positions must have been graded with all the other ones in town and so on, though, also?
I'm sorry?
These positions, the custodians, I mean, they're
Personnel boards,
employees,
you
so.
can look at the school positions.
School positions are not.
All right, sorry.
This is why we have these meetings. All right. The next.
Welcome it, but.
Yeah.
Glad to look at this, be glad to look at light and water.
Oh, yeah.
The non-professional people that should be fair across the town.
The next two items are substitutes and professional development, $100,000 for substitutes and $20,000 for professional development. What we're trying to do here is, in the past, we've budgeted this in the operating budget, but we've underfunded it, and when we've used more, we've made it up out of our revolving funds. Because we've become reliant on the revolving funds, we're not as comfortable operating that way, and we feel like we need to get these line items caught up to what the actual spending is, so that the operating budget reflects the spending, which it hasn't necessarily done. We're not looking to use more substitutes than we have been over the last several years, although our usage of substitutes has gone up over the past couple of years. We have a younger teaching staff. We've had more leaves for pregnancies and other things like that. But we've also, because of mandates that have come down, we have to pull teachers out of the classroom for part of the day, not all the day. But when you pull them out for part of the day to meet an obligation that they have to do that's beyond the classroom teaching, we have to get somebody in there. So we have seen that trending upward. We have been able to meet it through the revolving funds, but we want to catch it up in the operating budget. And it's the same thing with professional development. We have more teachers taking advantage of it. That's actually a good thing. It has a positive impact on the district, but we need to catch the budgeting with catch it up with the actual. We have been spending that money. This isn't new money that we've been spending, but we've been making up out of the revolving funds, and we just want to get more
Does this
reflective.
mean that the revolving funds would begin to build up a little bit again to?
Well, it depends on, on other factors that, how reliant are we going to be on the revolving funds relative to what we're trying to do with the budget versus the appropriation versus local aid and state aid and things like that. So I can't say for sure. It could be a question of, we might be able to slowly build it back up, or maybe we're not going to go down as fast as we thought we were going to go down. That's the
Or
other
we'll
thing.
just spend it somewhere else.
Again, and then the other thing is that, as we've become more reliant on the revolving funds, what we've talked about is that it reduces our flexibility, and this is an example of that. And in past years, we've had the flexibility to meet an underfunded number and do it for a couple of years, trying to determine, is this an aberration? There was a 1 or 2 year thing, and now we're going to correct back to where we historically have been. And what we're finding out is that, no, this isn't an aberration. It looks like we need to rethink how we budget it, and we need to do it sooner rather than later, because we're losing that flexibility to deal with it out of the revolving funds, because we're earmarking the revolving funds for other aspects of the operating budget. So those are the increases. This is an initial, we just talked about it for the first, we've been talking about it in Budget Subcommittee, but this is the first time we talked about it in Open Committee. The next steps will be to fit this into our cost center structure and show the impact, on percentage growth by cost center. And I know that Steve Mark is working on the spreadsheet model that Bonnie has given to us, and he should have that ready in December. So that'll be another way of taking a look at it. And then, we haven't really thought about, funding and how to, meet this increase or where it's going to happen or what we can't do relative to the funding constraints. But that's the next level of discussion to have, both, with the school committee and then out with the other boards.
Had you guys looked at capital, or?
We do, yep, I have the capital list here, and Bonnie has it, This list has 19 items on it for a total of $1 million. The first thing I would ask you to do is look at the last item on the list, which is bleachers for Alumni Field at $400,000.
It's one thing that's in the book, I guess.
Yeah, it's in the book, yep. It's in your book. It's $400,000, so it's 40% of what this list has on it. They need to get looked at and get done. They don't necessarily need to get done this year. But the other thing to keep in mind is that, there's an effort to think about Alumni Field as a whole, and the bleachers would conceivably be part of that. So if that happened out of a project of that nature, then this would come off of this list and get, rolled up into.
We're seeing not conflicting, but varying stories on the condition of the bleachers.
Yeah.
And, Mike Lynn came in with his presentation.
Right.
And some other, the Park and Rec has talked about it as well. Has anybody actually looked at those bleachers? Are they safe? Are they not safe?
Right now, they're not out of code, and we have had them looked at. We have had an engineer come and look at them and point out where the stresses are and why this is going to need to get dealt with. But nobody's told us that, hey, you're out of your minds. Put some yellow tape up right now, because
If that's the case, then I'd say take a bulldozer to it and
right.
get them.
Yeah, that is not the case at the moment. They are serviceable for the moment. The question is that
really
we
my
know
question.
that they're not going to be serviceable for the long term. That's
Yeah,
just
no,
not a
no.
reality of the situation.
No,
So they
no.
need, minimally, they're going to need to get dealt with, whether it's as a singleton effort rolled into this capital budget, or if it's part of a greater effort that would be funded in a different manner. That's to be determined.
My only real question is, are they, should they be torn down? If
No,
case
at the
is
moment, nobody has
An
indicated
engineer
that.
says, no, they're safe.
Yeah.
Okay, now we can go into the pot with everything else.
The rest of them are, this is a very typical capital list we've seen this year by year. We're looking at technology, security and access systems, the Kiva room at the high school. We'd like to upgrade that, because when it was built, it was a terrific room, and it was like cutting edge. at the time. It's no longer cutting edge. We don't need the wires anymore that were run in there. So we'd like to replace that, some of the things in there, and get it caught up and make it, actually increase the sizing on it. Auto scrubbers, which we use. And then, the rest of it is just, your basic capital replacement type items. This is in a prioritized type of list. So if we were looking to, we're only going to get a certain amount of, we would go right down the line, more or less, plus or minus, a line item or two.
Mike, on the technology replacements, this is something, should we expect that every year, like the Chromebooks and things like?
Yeah, that's the way we've been looking at it, is, every year we're gonna come up with a plan to, replace, as things hit their usage, and we'll add those in there.
Like the lockers, are these the infamous locker replacement?
Yeah, so if you right now, in the boys' locker room, you have lockers on the wall, 2 walls, and then you have benches in the middle, and the kids just throw their stuff on the benches and the floor. And what we're looking to do, and those benches used to be, the lockers were bolted down onto them. They're not really benches, they're there for the lockers. Right. So what we're looking to do is replace those and get those back in there. Yeah.
So I know this is just 1 year, but, there is a 5 or 10-year capital plan also, so it's all stepped out?
Yeah, and again, there are things that would impact the schools in a positive way. They're not on this list because they're part of the PMBC, that big study that they did, and all that kind of thing. So this is kind of day-to-day stuff specific to us, but there's other longer-term, bigger projects related to the buildings as an investment in the community. But yeah, we do have a plan, and we're tweaking it all the time. And that's why a lot of this you'll see again next year, because not all this is going to get done, and we recognize that. But they might move up the priority list, So, and we do have a rolling list to think about.
And we're not getting anywhere near bricks and mortar in any of the schools in your mind?
I don't think so, not at the moment. If we were, we would look at Shaker Lane. That's kind of the cycle. That's the oldest, the one that's had the last time that they had any intervention on it. But it's a perfectly legitimate building at the moment. It's solid, it's warm, it's dry, and we are doing some. We're replacing the univent heaters year by year on that. So that seems okay. I really, as a community, I would say that we need to keep an eye on the growth rate, and are we going to require more physical space for our kids? At the moment, I don't think that's the case, but as we go through the master plan process and other efforts, we might say, hey, in 6 or 7 years or 10 years, we might very well need another building or an addition or a wing, however you want to look at it. But I think that's a town-wide analysis and discussion, and not strictly the school thing.
But I think if you guys could keep it on your radar.
Oh, yeah.
Because that would then drive a process for selectmen and us to try to
I appreciate that.
plan another addition somewhere. Okay.
For sure.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'd just like to say, it's been an ongoing process of getting the schools who operate by a different set of legal rules and the other town departments to get them more integrated into our attempt at an early budget process, and I think this is a much more level of detail at an earlier point in the process than we've seen before, and thank you to you and your team for
Yep, no,
doing
it's
that.
fine, and we're right on schedule with the rest of it, too, so I think it'll be a perfectly fine process in terms of presenting the information. We'll see about coming up with solutions.
Right.
Like one thing you mentioned, just recently, something came to our real estate office, like we always get contacts about school rankings, and I know you know the School Digger, which is one of those programs that rates schools. The high school itself is ranked 13th out of 339 schools.
Wow.
No, the programming is great, we feel really good, and the high school, I would kind of feel like it's kind of the showpiece, because academically, there's a lot going on, but you also have all the extracurriculars and things, and the kids have an opportunity to step outside the classroom and show what they're capable of, and, it's been we feel like we're in a really great spot, and again, you can see by the school choice, people want to come to Littleton, either by moving here, because like I say, you have middle school kids now that have showed up for basketball tryouts. I'm like looking at my son like, who's that? He goes, oh, he moved here from Woburn. I go, who's that? Well, he moved here from Somerville. You know, so people they know it, it's being publicized, and people are reflecting that, it's, that's great. It creates some challenges at times, but they're good challenges to have, and it's a good reason to have challenges versus the alternatives.
Well, and we talked about that with Mike Lee when he came the other night. One of the things that I always thought when my kids were going through school here, one of the real pluses for me in Littleton is that you can try something new when you don't have to be a superstar by the time you're 10 to have a chance at trying these things. And I think that's huge for our kids.
Terrific.
Whether it's sports or arts or anything else.
Yeah.
And so I do think that's key. And the participation, we know all the good things that come
Right.
from the kids from being engaged
Yeah.
and connected and all those things as well. So.
Yeah, I think when Mike mentioned that 68% of the kids are involved in sports, which is huge. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it is, and I'll tell you right now, the biggest reason for that is the track team. It's a terrific program that, they don't have to cut, and the kids show up and they get to participate, and everybody gets to run a race every day, no matter, you get the medal or, you get to get your name in the paper, but everybody gets to run a race. So that's been a great program. But we also have hockey, which not every district is hockey. We have a golf team. We have girls hockey. Now they co-op with Westford, but that's a terrific opportunity. So yeah, it's a pretty encompassing program. And the other thing to keep in mind is that we have all these sports and we still keep winning and going to playoffs. So the kids are really getting after it. They're really showing their capacity. And then there's a play going on at the high school this weekend. And we're adding technology programs that are outside of the classroom to give kids an opportunity to show what they're capable of in that regard. So highly motivated kids that want to get after it have terrific opportunities in Littleton. Like you said, they don't necessarily have to compete with as many people to get there, and then they get a chance to participate. So we're very happy. Everything's in good shape, and we can keep moving forward even better.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay. Right on time.
Maybe by your
It's up to you.
Number change.
Actually, we caught up some. Not as far behind as we were, but anyway. All right, introduce,
Good morning, Diane Croy, I'm your town clerk.
Morning.
How is everybody today?
Awesome.
Hopefully you're ready to go to lunch,
better
so I
than
can
we
figure it out. You're not asking questions for me.
You're behind schedule.
Motion, we'll work right through it.
Yeah, so really not too many changes. Not too many changes for me. Basically, you asked for two budgets, the level staffed, and so what we've done is just for the first one, it would be the COLA. It is myself and Linda Lord. She's a 15-hour a week. She's been with us since I've been there. She came in January right after I did. So she is 15 hours, so you see the step for both she and I. If you look, it is about $1,800 for the year. It's about a little over 2%. And the mission would be for my increase, which would be going from 35 hours a week to 40 hours a week. And the reason being is that a lot of people are looking for the clerk to be there for more than 35 hours a week. I've already changed the public hours from 30 to 35 hours a week. We went from being open at 9 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the morning. So a lot of people are actually taking advantage of that. And it's become very popular because a lot of people like the morning people before they go to work. Some people come in and take advantage of that. So I think that that's become popular. So we'd like to go to the other end and perhaps be open, some night during the week because I find myself coming back a lot for people that are looking to do either marriage licenses or sometimes I find myself coming back to actually host a meeting.
Swear people in.
Somebody has forgotten to post a meeting to, sometimes, you're right, to swear people in because people can't get in during my office hours during the day. So it's a convenience for a lot of people and I think it's a great thing to offer to the residents.
So if you did this additional 5 hours, you would tend to have standard open hours in the evening?
Well,
Haven't decided that yet.
so it would be public hours, yes. I haven't quite figured out what hours they would be, but yeah, it would be public hours.
That's kind of a return to the way it was years ago, right?
Exactly,
It was
exactly.
Thursday nights that were open late, it was
Exactly,
time.
yeah.
They do that up in there. They run a short day on Fridays. They're only open till like 1. But they're open, I think it's Tuesday and Thursday nights till 7.
Yeah, we haven't quite figured out what the, the configuration would be, but it would be something that, we'd like to offer to the public, so that.
Pardon my ignorance, but is the office already open any evenings, the collector open on evenings now? Or I just don't know.
Monday until 6 o'clock.
Just until 6.
Any other questions, anybody?
Good.
Okay.
Anal start.
Thank you.
That's what I like. Thank you. Short and sweet.
I like that. There's no
Now you're back
tab.
on track.
There's no tab for.
Not quite,
community.
but you did good.
No. No tab.
Oh, tab.
Okay. Matt?
There's 2 of us here today.
I still have my problem with this meeting executive position. This is not the place to discuss that.
Hello? Hey, how are you?
Hi, Mitt Wanzer, Community Preservation Committee, and Bartlett Harvey is on our committee, and also at the Littleton Housing Authority.
So we don't have a tab, so we don't have information from you. So what, you want to tell us about what your budget plans are?
Well, I think we're sort of, we'll probably break the mold for this meeting a little bit. We don't have a budget per se that we plan around. People come to us with their plans. So, I mean, the basic summary would be we have over $200,000 revenue each year. That doesn't escalate greatly. It's kind of fixed. And then there's, we've also approved through CPA amendment, we have blended funds available to us. And some of those have come in and haven't been assigned. Some have been assigned by category. So our savings has grown greatly over the past 2 years. I don't have the most recent numbers, but we have a balance of about $750,000. And then and we don't have anything in the pipeline that looks like it will be an expense. Well, it's hard to say. Come spring town meeting, we might have 3 projects that we're trying to fund. We might have none. Typically, we don't know that until a little later. And hopefully this meeting will help us, sort that out so that we're not surprised by things. Things that are on our radar that the CPC has heard about and and we discuss, typically each meeting there's sort of a little bit, oh, I heard this, and I get an update. The Cooper Farm, for instance, we've been talking about for years, and I think most of the people in this room know more about it than I do probably at this point. We don't have anything for us formally on that. There's another open space parcel that is on our radar, so to speak. The K property was described, and we don't have a proposal for that. The only thing right now that has gone through the first stages of our process is bike racks. I think that's on the order of $20,000.
For where?
For around town.
Just in general?
Yeah. And the Littleton Housing Authority, we'd like to renew commitments that we've made the past 2 years to them. So actually, that would be something we'd probably bring to town meeting. Would be, and Bartlett can speak more to this, and he'd also like to expand it a little bit if we can sort of arrange to have, since housing is one of the assigned categories in the community preservation, 10% of our revenue has to go dedicated to that. And then, so given that framework, it seems like we can meter that out, and if they have fixed expenses that they regularly do, the Community Preservation Act allows for pretty, a lot of discretion for how that money is spent in support of housing in town. So 20,000, do you want to say more about that?
Sure. I've had sort of a preliminary discussion with the Housing Board about this. We're going to request on the order of $20,000 to replace some of the ceilings that are in danger of falling down on the inside the units. Some of them have fallen. The original heating system was water pipes embedded in a plaster ceiling for radiant heat, and a combination of pipes deteriorating and ceilings not being attached properly has caused problems. So we're scheduling or going to replace 2 or 3 a year until they're all done. The Housing Authority has a problem with the way the CPC money is handed out because there are repair issues or issues that need community money to be, because there's an issue that needs to be done. If the CPC approves a project and then we have to wait for the town meeting to approve it, then there's a delay, and she can't commit, Lisa can't commit to it, and the contractor can't get paid until after the meeting. So we're proposing that the town meeting approve a sum of money, and I'm using $20,000 as a placeholder, as an account that can be drawn down for legitimate repairs. And once that is approved, then Lisa would come before the Community Preservation Committee with a proposal. We'd look at it, talk about it, but vote on it, and presumably approve it, and then that way she could commit within a month instead of waiting for the 6-month town meeting and pay it. So that's a proposal that we're going to try to set up an account to do. And the other proposal is that there's a great need for housing in town. The Housing Authority would like to be able to expand, either acquire new units or to eventually acquire a piece of land to build some units. So I'm proposing that we start a savings account in some form or another for that.
Or any particular type of units, like
Well, there's a long list of people waiting to get in both the elderly and the family sides. So, I think some of the apartment sizes have a waiting list of over 100 people. So there's no realistic hope for somebody coming in today and getting in. So it would be probably, I don't know. We haven't talked about that. If it's big enough, it would be a combination. So that's kind of open. But there are studies of housing needs that we would have to look at and work with those groups. There's been talk of setting up a housing trust that the Housing Authority would work with. I mean, that's all sort of up in the air, but
How did these originally get built? I'm sorry to interrupt. How did these originally get built? Did the town pay to build these?
Federal funding, and then the budget's federal money that, or it's...
Well, it comes through the state.
Yeah.
But it was a
Originally, it was federal.
Block grant?
Now, the Housing Board is an appointed board?
It's mostly elected in the town. I was appointed by the governor. There's one appointed member.
Okay.
But the rest of them are elected.
They're all elected, okay.
$20,000 savings account idea is good. It's a really good idea.
Well, I'd like it to be bigger, but...
Yeah, no, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
the idea of
Right.
being able
But it's
to
a
approve
petty
that
cash.
Petty cash,
as a
really,
bucket
right.
Yeah.
to use this year while we approve another for the following year at town meeting, so.
And we had discussed this with Lisa, and you may recall, last spring, there was a discussion with the planning board about whether to set up an inclusionary zoning bylaw, which might generate funds, and then what do you do with the money? You put them in some communities establish local housing trusts. Foxborough has one, lots of other communities do. Lisa's experience in Groton with a housing trust is that it's one more board you have to go to and bring up to speed on how you use the money. Whereas if we've been committed to the Housing Authority to give them some funds, we don't have any other takers, the housing monies. Mark, can you put up the slide on the screen? That I found these were the balances that we closed the fiscal year with. So this is the information we showed at town meeting in May. What would our ending balances be? So you've got 122,000 for housing, which we don't have any plans for. That we have not had a community-wide discussion about should we use any of those funds towards a private development, for example, to purchase affordable, give them a subsidy for affordable units. Many communities do that. We haven't, Littleton hasn't done that yet, so we have no track record, we haven't talked about it. But the Housing Authority has been a recipient of housing funds, but mechanically, it's so awkward that you might have a project that comes up which doesn't get funding when you make your request to DHCD annually, that you have a need of, building need that's this long, and they might give you money for this long. And as things break, as you need work done, if you had a shorter way to get funding, rather than submitting a request now, maybe waiting a year for the timing of town meeting, the idea of putting money in an appropriation and then making the Housing Authority go back to the CPC to say, all right, now we want to expend it, make a, we need your approval to make a finding that it's an eligible purpose for that. So that makes a lot of sense.
What happens if it's not eligible, though?
Then they can't spend it.
They
If
don't
it's
put
not
the money.
eligible, they cannot spend it with CPC funds.
Right, but the fund that we're talking about, setting up this $20,000 fund,
Would only be usable for CPA eligible.
so it had to be approved first before the funds
Yeah,
can be spent.
But the CPC meets monthly, basically.
Right. Pretty much.
So that rather than waiting till the May special and the December meeting, Housing Authority could come in and say, the roof's falling, we need to spend $15,000.
I get it.
But this-
CPC could
yeah.
agree that it's a light project, and then they would be authorized to
They'd be
spend.
authorized to spend.
And their meeting with us doesn't cue the process to subsequently have town meeting approve it.
Right.
That happens 8 or 10 months prior,
Right.
so that the money's sitting in an account, and everybody has to trust.
We had gone through that dance once before when there was money that was appropriated in a CPC article for monies for the Housing Authority properties, and they didn't spend it all. So the question was, what do you do with it? Do you have to go back to town meeting and spend the rest? No, you don't. We set up the procedure that the Housing Authority could just go back, ask the CPC for permission to use those remaining funds on something that was CPA eligible. So that worked out.
So would that be a fixed petty cash fund, or would it replenish like an Easy Pass?
No, it would be a fixed amount appropriated by town meeting each year. So
Yeah,
every
but
year,
that
let's say
each
you
year
wanted
could
to
build
commit
up.
$20,000 a
Appropriation,
year,
right.
you could just have it in your plan. And the other thing that I'd say would be important is that when, we had a meeting several months ago now where the Housing Authority briefed our state legislative delegation on building needs. And one of the things that came out of that at our Senator Eldridge, or Sarah's request was, it would be helpful if there was a multi-year plan for building improvements that the Housing Authority has, so they can see what that is in context. That would be a very useful tool and frame of reference to have. Because they're happy to go and seek state funding, but they want to want a running start at it.
So to me, this is just coming back to the next question I was going to ask anyway, which was when we talked about the blended funds and all the work we did last year, the next big piece of that was kind of a long-term plan and budget for the CPC funds in general, right?
Yes.
So is that what you're going to talk about next?
Well,
Or where are we on that?
You have to have projects performed, too.
No, we're not.
This is a
because
process. What that was about was the use of the CPA funds. I don't have a handy slide on that. I'll look for it. We had committed by the Selectmen, Finance Committee, and Community Preservation Committee jointly adopting financial policy on the blended Community Preservation Act. What we committed to do was to jointly adopt a long-range fiscal plan, so that would be our guide. It would be, say, a 10-year plan that, say, over 10 years, we want to have X $1 million available for this list of open space purchases, or that list of recreation improvements, or the other list of housing things, historic, whatever it is. And what we had said we wanted to do was build off of the whatever plan the CPC has for its own 1%. That we would be guided in figuring out what we should do with the additional, up to additional 2%, to be guided by the CPC. So I know you've been working on that part of it, but I think it would be well for us to agree that the big three need to meet, maybe in January or something, to have that as a framework, because there are two important things that we can expect to see happening in at May town meeting. One is, it's the opportunity again to put monies into the CPA fund to increase the base for the state match, if we want to do that again. We did the maximum in fiscal 2015. We put $450,000 into the fund, and that was, and if we want to do that, but we had specific places that we wanted it to go, specific buckets. So we ought to take a look at what money we want to put in. And one of the reasons why you look at that is to see if there are projects that are then on your horizon, either that might be at town meeting. Are we going to have an open space purchase acquisition at town meeting? I don't know yet. I don't know yet.
But absent any specific project, there ought to be in place soon. It needs to be, whatever the long-term plan is for the first 1% or the second 1%, that should be accessible, and it ought to be updatable, and anybody who's interested, selectmen, finance committee, whoever, town administrators, should be able to, get their hands on it, and it ought to, and the process ought to be spelled out, how that's handled year-round. You're on a different calendar than the town's budget cycle, I get that, but it ought to be something that everybody can get their hands around.
Well, but if you look at, the vulture sitting up in the tree is the conservation land. And that's what sort of spawned the town's setting up the CPC. And that's the major, group that covets that money. Now, whether, some of the recreation plans could use bigger pieces of that money or not is also a possibility. But, it's not, so far, I don't believe the CPC has been able to get the conservation group to lay out a plan for it.
Well, we've got it open. They don't have to wait for anybody to do anything. Don't we have a recently updated open space plan, Keith?
It's in the process,
Yeah.
but I think more to the point with the long-range plan is that that it is important for the three groups to agree that there are certain long-term goals, and we don't necessarily have to put a face on which open space properties we might require, although we know one of them.
We spoke to this before. You can describe the sorts of properties, the sorts of criteria you want to target.
In broad brush, and here's the importance of the plan. We know that we're going to have millions of dollars worth of needs for things that we just know we want to do, because the community's telling us that they want certain open space parcels purchased, and they don't come cheap. We know that there are significant recreation rehab projects that we need to undertake, in addition to new ball fields or whatever. So we've got millions of dollars worth of new projects, and it's important that we see what those are, map them out over time, just like we do with a 10-year roadway improvement plan. Which projects do we think we can undertake when, and then to see where those revenues are going to come from, because we've used cell tower funds, converted those into the CPA fund now available for open space purchases. There's some mitigation funds that the determination has not been made yet, how those would be used. So it's an important, we need to be on the same page, because then that's the protection when the CPC then gets a request from that's not on the list, that they need not feel compelled to fund it, simply because it's the only person standing in line, that you can say, well, we need to have the money in place for when these big ticket items come, and so that's the context that can be provided for the CPC when they get any years.
But there's input required to them. It's not their role to come back and tell the town.
I understand that, but we agreed on collectively coming up with a kind of written plan,
Right.
policy
Right.
document. That's what doesn't exist yet.
Right, we agreed that the CPC would develop their plan of how they would like the 1% to be used, that they spend anyway, that they don't need our input on initially, and that would be the building block for us to then say, what would we do if it were up to 3%? And how would that money be spent? So I think that it'd be useful to set a deadline of if the CPC could have their work product done, say, by January, that it'd be useful for us to meet by no later than February to discuss the big plan.
Yeah, and what we're working on in terms of defining a policy around how to go about that, internally, our committee is considering that we want to sort of articulate that there's different types of funds, the 1% that is the tax, real estate tax surcharge, the 2% that's creatively funded and has collaboration through town hall or largely is led by them to obtain additional funds that, and then they'll garner the state match. We're trying to articulate a policy that annually we invite people to put stuff on our radar, sort of like you're doing is, with the whole town today, and then define for the year that we're committed to making sort of shaping the year anyway in a categorical, compartmentalized, we want to put so much in open space this year, so much in housing, so much, et cetera. So that, and that falls outside of the 10-10-10, so we have to figure out what to do with the 70% on a typical year. And during that meeting, we can say, last year would have been a perfectly good time to say, nobody's really standing in front of us, now's time to put some aside, and we're gonna, we'll dedicate this to open space, say, because there's all this buzz going on about Cooper Farm. That money will be, with the help hopefully of the town accountant, would be to flag it so that in subsequent years, we could say, well, in 2015, there wasn't a lot of action happening in CPC, so we determined that some money would be put aside for this category. So that, in essence, the pot builds up, but, well, okay, so then the flip side of that is that, I'm fully support the Littleton Housing Authority, and Bartlett, you're a great member of our committee. He represents, and what you heard today from that, a perfect example of the person in line. They're currently the only person in line in some ways, other than the bike racks, to say we'd like $60,000 this year. And if at 1% we're able to contribute 10%, it's probably far below that, so that as partners, I'd say it would be helpful to know if the town feels that we can afford to put way more than 10% of CPC money into housing as a regular thing. So now that, if you have that $60,000 on your radar this year, then how do you balance that with the other things? For instance, as Park and Rec said, we want $100,000 every year from CPC. I don't think I've heard anything similar in any way to that. It's mostly project-based, but...
Hold a hearing and let people know what your possibilities are and what your intentions are, invite people to come in and state their case, and then you're doing it from the basis of some, input or an empty room, whatever it is, but you've given people a chance to speak.
Right, and some of it, I think, is, you talk about the people standing in line, but part of it, you always want to have a bucket of money for the people standing in line. But there's some of it, just because there's people standing in line doesn't mean that's where all the money goes. I mean, that's the point of the plan. Some of it you may be saying, well, even though there's people standing in line here, a certain amount of it's going to get put away for whether it's open space or housing or whatever it is,
I
and
used
this
a
is what's
confusing
left.
metaphor maybe,
Okay.
because the line, when we described it with somebody with their hand out in
Yep.
the past, that's represented the line. But I think the fact that the Littleton Housing Authority is here today saying, we would like to put it on your radar,
Yep.
that we want $60,000 regularly without even a project on the books, so that could, and that's a piece of the pie. And so the rest of the pie, at least for the 2%, if we're able to generate revenue like that for the next 5 years. And it'd be good for the town to find that, up to even 100%.
Initially, personally supportive of that, but then also, you now start talking about supporting operations, which requires, if it's going to happen, and Al and I are both former Housing Authority commissioners too, and in fact, I think we were all appointees, different governors, but I'm the old guy, I was a Dukakis appointee, remember him?
He's the old guy.
Right. But if we're going to get into that kind of arrangement, that necessarily involves more oversight, up front. If it's 60 grand a year, or whatever the number is that are going toward an operation, then we're going to want to see what the overall, spending is, which is not a relationship we currently have with the Housing Authority. It's independent.
And I think from this side of the table, from the town side of the table, I would want to be comfortable that the Housing Authority is doing everything it can to maximize the revenue in from the state. As Keith pointed out, maybe the Housing Authority needs to be in contact with our legislators with a plan, a long-range plan, so that they're willing to step up and maybe help us more than they have in the past. There may be money out there that we just aren't availing ourselves of. So before the town steps up and starts funding things that maybe the state legally should be funding, we should push on that and understand what that is.
As a former commissioner, I can guarantee you that the state is not funding even half of what they should be funding in terms of maintenance.
Well, that's okay, but are we getting all we can? It goes back to the fire collection issue. Are we getting as much as we can get? Are we paying attention to as much as we can get from other sources? And, if we need to do 100,000 a year for those, so those buildings don't fall down, well, somebody should be telling us that. And I applaud you coming forward to raise this issue, because if those buildings fall down, we have a bigger problem than 50 or 60 grand a year.
I think I heard Paul say that he wanted to have criteria in each of the categories. So if you have 2 people, 3 people standing in line, you've got a checklist, and the guy that gets the most checks gets the best consideration. And it could be something as simple as best positive impact on the most number of residents, or something like that.
And there might even be, if you've got your long-term plan in place, you might have 3 people in line and say no to all 3 of them because they don't make the cut, and your money's better served going toward the long-term goals for each of the categories.
I don't think, you referenced a long-term plan. We don't have plans to make a long-term plan at this point, and I really think from what I've heard, it would be ideal to have that set up, but I think, and this is my personal opinion, and I've stated many times that I don't think our committee is capable or has the expertise to define groups, categories, budgets, pockets, and make a list. I think that's the business.
I think it's Keith indicated, we can do this jointly. That's why we're here. If I make it sound like we're throwing that at, I think it's something we need to do collectively, and I think Keith had the right idea.
It's absolutely a joint effort. We're happy to work directly with CPC on that.
And I was alluding to that too, saying that we need to articulate our plan, and is that, so.
I think the plan, Mark, can you put the slide up on the screen, please? This is just shows an example of what we were looking at to develop a blended plan. The first column is fiscal 2015. These represent the monies that we put in that year, that we put 15 Great Road host community agreement funds in. We put Reed Meadow funds, which are just for housing and can only be used for housing. We're going to have more Reed Meadow funds this year. Now, those will go in exclusively for housing. That's part of that host community agreement. And then some funds from cell towers. So, and so for for monies so these are the monies we put in last year. These are just one combination of funds that we could put in this year in order to reach the maximum 2% increment. And since the following year, we'd have a big chunk from the Potpourri group that we have not even begun to discuss how that might be used. we could, you know, even for the year, even for a year from now, fiscal 17, we could be putting in the maximum 2%. But the idea is, before we put any money in, we want to have the plan in place of what would it be used for. And we're committed to work together with CPC, and I'll be happy to, you know, I'll come to your meeting this Wednesday is your next one, I think, and we'll map out a process for how we'll get that going.
Good.
And then we'll all get together by February, let's
Yes, go ahead. Yep.
Just before we quit, I just wanted to say a few things that are on the radar, so to speak, or that we've heard some talk about, and I just wonder if you guys could keep your ear to the ground on that. The Long Store, for instance, the artificial turf fields. I heard people talking about the grandstands, and, you know, there's all sorts of recreation things, the bathhouses. The community preservation sees all these projects, and they're wide scope, and a lot of them have, it's a challenge for our committee to sort of look at them all and say, you know, does this smell like community preservation? And we don't have a test, we don't have a smell test, but when we sit, that's the 9 of us, and see what's coming down the pipeline, we hope that, you know, through these meetings and being able to have your ear to the ground, to be able to sort of prime things in that direction, so that we're not asked to redo the exterior of the firehouse because it's a 1920s building with brick, and maybe it's historic. Maybe you could do that. I'm not saying that you couldn't, but you could will far exceed our budget with the number of things that people are thinking would be creatively funded in this way. And so, for instance, so Littleton Housing, when you say this is really, we're funding operating budget, the same is true maybe, but it's not called operating budget. It would be for development of new resources and recreation. It's an ongoing thing to create new resources for the townspeople to use in that category. So just a little philosophical grandstand. I beg your pardon.
No.
Thank you very much.
Why you're here, that's great. We want to hear from you. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right. John, come on up, let's do veterans and short break.
Have you been to any meetings, or?
16.
Okay.
Remember 16? You remember 16? I don't want to go back.
The meeting, I was away.
I knew it wasn't me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
John Borowski, Veterans Agent.
John, good afternoon.
All right, sorry, it is afternoon.
Catch us up, John.
Scheduled to be morning time.
We work 24/7, so
Catch up, yeah.
Physicist.
Catch up. Let's see, where are we?
What tab is that?
16.
16.
You want to tell us here?
Well, I'll tell you, well, our caseload is climbing every year. Last year, this current year, as of today, I'm up to 16 clients. Last month I had 15, so we're climbing a little bit every month.
And these are unique, these are different, 15 last month are different than 16 this month?
No, they're the same.
Okay.
It's just one
I see.
additional one
Okay.
to the total. Okay. It's, you know, monthly, it's almost all the same. Once they get on the thing, unless situations change. A couple of them, if I can get them jobs, I can get them off the rolls, but trying to find jobs for some of these are hard. So that's basically where the clients go. The calls per year are increasing, of course. More information is out there, so people are asking. A couple of the new clients, by the way, are from the new apartment complex down there on Great Road, so, and that's not even completely done yet, so that's, expect to see some more from there. So that's...
Are you seeing more younger veterans, or these more
Yes,
older
definitely. I've
veterans?
got
A lot of the younger veterans,
some, and the younger ones that are more costly. You know, benefits are a little bit more because of their situation. So, yeah, it definitely is increasing in that respect, especially those apartments.
Right.
I don't know what else I can tell you other than I put down salaries. I put a mission statement of $7,500 for a salary, to increase. Reason behind that was because recently we went through this whole year, past year, I've been doing classes and stuff like that to get certified, and we finally got certified got noticed last week that I passed the test, so.
Congratulations.
You won't lose any money because I'm working anyhow, that's the main thing. So, thank you. That, and also I'm thinking of maybe doing nighttime hours too, because you never know, there might be somebody that can't make it into the town hall during the day. I haven't heard of anybody, but some of the phone calls that are on my phone, who knows, that type of thing.
Okay, so this would go from 6 to 9 hours, John? Office hours,
Yes,
6 to
yes.
9 office hours, just so people understand the extent.
We'll try to increase it a little bit. If not nighttime, then come maybe another day or something like that. See how it works.
Yeah.
We'll try both ways. The benefits so far this year, I've spent $50,000 through October. And out of the $120,000 budget I already have for this year. I'm estimating that with everybody I've got now, it's going to be total by June, will probably be about 160. If things stay the way they are. Of course, who knows what they do.
Yeah, if you remember last year, we ended up having to cover the shortfall with a large transfer. It looks like there's another large transfer coming if we don't plan to cover it in the May special.
Right.
And I don't know whether this is an account that can be overspent or not.
No.
It can't. So almost by definition, we will have to plan on a fairly sizable reserve fund transfer versus the budget. So, I mean, the large jump in his budget going up to 175 is not unreasonable.
It's becoming the norm now.
Right
Yeah.
now, just because of the history, so.
We made a big jump in FY15 funding, but it didn't matter because it exceeded
Is it a year
this.
lag to get the state reimbursement?
Right.
Yeah, I think
So like
Yeah.
75% comes
Yeah,
back,
it's a year to get back.
and that basically flows through to free cash, then,
That's
right,
correct, yeah.
basically,
You
right?
get the 75 back, but it's following
You
year.
have to wait a year.
So, I just wanted to
Yeah.
float a balloon that there is a large transfer coming for that.
Okay.
Well, all I have, I don't, if anybody, got any questions?
But you certainly perform a worthwhile service,
Yeah,
John.
absolutely, great you're there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We try.
the salary increase, the 5,000 is, I started getting, back when I was
Way
the
back then.
veterans, I did below those many years ago.
Been the same, yeah. Well, I've been here for 5 years, so.
Yeah, so
But
it's.
John's worth it.
John, look how much work he does.
There you go.
The other thing is the 6 hours per week or the 9 hours per week, that's in the office doing work, but believe me,
Believe me, yeah,
there's buku hours
There's
beyond
many
that
hours.
that you deal with people and phone calls and everything else.
Yeah, and I go back a lot of times in the afternoon because it just has to be done, so.
Yeah, we're getting our money's worth, John. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, John.
All right, I think we're going to take at least 15? No, 10 at
You
least.
got 6 minutes to eat your
10-minute break.
sandwich.
10-minute break, 6. Thank you.
Be here in